up?
Hello.
What's up? How's it going, Matt?
It's excellent.
Good to see you.
How are you, sir? How's everything up in Canada?
It's good, man. You know, actually, we had a really hot day today. Surprisingly, it's already been kind of getting colder. You know.
Yeah.
We no longer get like straight t-shirts and short weather. You kind of need at least some kind of jacket, that type of thing.
Mhm.
But hot, yeah. So t-shirts and shorts today, hot, sweating, So these days are few and far between. They still hit us, here in these parts. Sometimes into late September, shockingly, sometimes an occasional day or two in October, But for the most part, it starts to get cooler already. So enjoying it as much as I can. I just found out that Vivian told me that she has the day off tomorrow, and I don't know, some kind of bank holiday or whatever. She's in like whatever mortgages and shit. And so if the weather cooperates again like it did today, what the hell? Go out and do something, whatever. At least get some lunch or do something.
It sounds amazing.
Go out and enjoy, basically. Hello. While Matt and I have a private conversation publicly, hello to the rest of you who have been firing up a storm of comments. And so I'm going to jump in there to catch up, because otherwise, what happens. We will never catch up. And this is pretty insane. So I was the first guy in the chat tonight. So that was pretty cool to see. And if you don't count me, Hart, what's up? Good morrow, Sir Matt and Sir Ruben. Good to see you. Thanks for dropping in. John's comments with kids, which, by the way, everyone, damn it, I don't got. So John did a, I guess like a show and tell with Kavi. On Saturday night, and I man, is Kavi in the chat? Yes, he is.
Yep.
So Kavi's funny. Earlier in the week, I got the, I saw the promo for the show, so I was like, okay, good, excellent. Well, I'll check out Kavi's show. But I think because I saw it several days before the show actually aired, it ended up slipping my mind. So I ended up actually in the end forgetting all about it until it was 3 hours after the fact. I was like, because I really prefer watching, even as a watcher, just as a viewer, I prefer watching live, not on rewind if I can help it, So sad that I missed that. And haven't had a chance to watch it on the rewind yet either. But I did want to tell everybody about this, of course, as I usually am prone to do here. So let me do that for you guys by popping this link in, and you can see. Again, I call my show and tell. Obviously, Kavi's not going to call his the same thing, but that's essentially what it is with John. Here, let me pop it up here. With John's Comics with Kids. So that's the direct link to the show from Saturday night, last night. So please check it out if you can. Should be fun, and I look forward to seeing it hopefully later tonight or tomorrow. Let me see. Good evening, Comic Art Boston. Wow, you're here. Good to see you. And who else do we have? Dave, Hart, and Boston. All the hellos to everybody back and forth. TJ, what is up? Not sure how long I'll be connected. No worries, as long as you can. That's good. And thank you for the like, of course. Thank you, TJ. Yes, sir. Look at that, Hydra. What's up to you, sir? Good to see you.
All right.
And greetings to Dave. Hi, Dave. What up? What's up, Tom? Jason Ladwig. Good to see you, my friend. Good evening to everyone who's ready for some highbrow entertainment. You came to the right place for that, Tom. Yes, sir. What's up? Steve is giving me the half avocado. What do you smarter people than I know about that you could tell me that is supposed to mean to me? Matt, nothing? You don't got nothing? Okay, then I don't feel so bad.
My emoji game is poor.
Okay. I Are you sure that's what people came in here for? It's always what they come here for, TJ. Number one, different channel. What does that mean? I don't know what that means.
Oh, fan. I think he's commenting.
It's number one channel, period, Hydra. You should know that. Lowenbrow Entertainment. For Heart, probably. He's probably drinking that right now. Sweat off your brow entertainment. What's up, Rick? Good to see you. CJ, good to see you, of course. What's up, buddy? Heard a rumor that Ruben's new series will be comics and cheesecake and the pin. Good idea. Don't go giving me ideas, CJ. For sure. I wonder if Matt has collected art from an obscure artist. Yeah, I wonder if he has anything other than like super mainstream stuff, you know?
Well, the question is, did Ruben pick that from my collection to talk about?
That's right. Greetings to you, Jeff. What is up?
Hey,
Just a few blocks and a hop, skip, jumping away from the esteemed Matt right here with me. So, and Jeff, who, of course, in about a month's time, Jeff and I will finally we'll be doing our proper show and tell. Jeff's been on also, like Matt and like Kavi, who also will do it in December, and like Hart, who is, you know, all four of you guys who have been on multiple times, yet I never knew you didn't start off with a show and tell.
Wait, I'm having a vision. Jeff will discuss Star Wars art.
I'm not going to say anything, but
it'll be a damn treat because Jeff's collection is amazing.
I have a feeling he may not discuss it as much as you may think he will. I'll just leave it there. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's it. So next week will be Hart's show and tell. Tonight is you, Sir Matt. Yeah, like I said, then Jeff in a month or so, and then Kavi just probably a few weeks after that. So glad to finally get all four of you gents in to do this. So yeah, looking forward to tonight especially. Good evening to you, John Brown. What's up? And there he is, the man of the hour. Ruben, Matt, and Chat. What's up, Kavi? Root beer float weather. Today it absolutely was, yeah. Matt not wearing any makeup tonight? What does he mean by that?
I have no idea. I'm in different lighting. Maybe that helps.
I'm thinking that's what he must. Yeah, I don't know. He thinks he wear makeup. What's up, Peter?
I could afford makeup.
Peter, he of the recent Baltimore attendee event happenings, along with organizer Tom McDonald, who set up a meeting after was it last week? No, the week before, I guess. When Tom had Tom on, he was telling everybody to reach out to him if they wanted to hook up together when they got to Baltimore Con. So everything went well with them, as I understand, and I saw
proud new owner of a piece of Bernie Wrightson artwork that used to be in my collection.
Oh, I did not hear about that. That's what's okay. What's up, Tom? And okay, what's 103 in Henderson? Wow.
Yeah, it went back up to 105 yesterday. It had been kind of nice, and then it got hot again.
That's okay. That's really hot. Like I figured, even in Vegas, I figured you guys would be like, okay, 90, 92. Wow. Okay.
Next week, hopefully.
Holy crap, man. What's going to this beach house? I wish I had one. Hey, Matt from Comic Boston, of course. Hey, hi, people. Welcome, Matt from Vivian. Yes. Hi, Cab. Hi, CJ. Kavi. Spoiler, not everything we say at the start of the show should be put in the National Archives. Nothing ever, probably, I would think, that happens on this show should be put into the National Archives. Jeff Whitting, perfect weather for an archaeological dig. Nice. Yes, I need to catch that. Kavi did not see the promo. So I'm not the only one who missed. Thanks, man. So what else we got? Ruben likes to watch. Depends what you mean. Jason, I know what you mean, though, CJ. Let's see. No reason it's a good be one episode, much more than an hour. Yeah, I noticed it was about an hour and a quarter. So, you know, I did listen for a few minutes because I wanted to watch it. I just didn't have the time to stay there and watch at that moment. So, but I look forward to it for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And Kavi says that Chris, I got issues. Solved the Marvel Adventure Spider-Man pages. They're both John Boy Myers. Okay, you guys were wondering. Okay, and they figured it out. That's good. That's good. Glad to hear it. Okay, there again. I'm highlighting the link to that show. And what else we got? Penguin episode 2 on tonight. Enjoy it. I heard that it's been great. That's what people have been telling me.
I enjoyed the first episode.
Would you say, Matt?
I enjoyed the first episode.
Oh yeah, you too. Okay, that's good. Yeah, I want to check it out then. I'm gonna make time for that because I haven't heard a single negative comment yet. So that bodes well, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, when the masses are kind of all sort of sticking to the
although I let go of Disney, but I haven't heard anybody say anything bad about Agatha all along either.
Oh, I haven't heard anything, period, good or bad.
Right.
I personally don't give a damn. Like, it just seems like I don't see that as an excuse to give. Like, I didn't see her on the Vision, whatever you call it, show, Scarlet Witch. Like, I didn't see that. Like, oh my God. Oh, she's amazing. Oh my God. Please give her own show. She needs to have her own series. Like, what? Like, what? When I heard about it, I was like,
it was a strange greenlighting process that wouldn't have happened a mere 2 years later, but the wheels were already in motion when they started canceling other things. And so things like that and Echo, which might not have been great ideas, made it forward. And I think they apparently learned lessons from Echo to utilize in this. I don't know. I haven't seen it. But I do know also that in the last couple of days, Kevin Feige went on record with saying that Wanda plays a very important part in 2 more major Marvel movies and possibly a Wanda Scarlet Witch film. So that's 3 projects that the Scarlet Witch will be coming back into. So I'm guessing we'll see her in the last episode of this, if not sooner. Okay.
The answer to this question is no, Stanley. No. Much to your chagrin, I'm sure. Full House tonight. Yeah, it's good. It's a good one so far. It's a good one. Yeah, really solid. Nope, Jeff will only talk him back. And I'm almost catching up. Yes, come on. Hey, David. Hey, howdy. What's up, Dwayne? We had 15 people at the meetup. Yeah, that's a good one, man. That's real good. Had a wife and kid in Baltimore.
That's a baseball team.
The music references start coming up. I tried to make it for the meetup, got COVID and missed out. Oh, you got COVID again? Sorry, man. I hope you're feeling better anyways. Raul Antunes. Brazilian. I'm assuming. Maybe. Ooh, I'm getting little mosquitoes. Maybe Portuguese, but I'm going to go with Brazilian. And if I butchered your name, please forgive me and let me know maybe how to phonetically pronounce it, my friend. Thank you and good to see you. Always love to see new people dropping in, man. Went to Comic-Con and never went back. And he never came back. Went out for a ride and I never came. Okay, all you guys. All right. What's today's topic? Today's topic is a show and tell with Matt Kennedy. Yes, sir. Everybody's got a lonely heart, man. You guys are whipping it. It's just, one guy whips out the music and everybody follows suit. One of his last great albums, Dancing in the Dark, did chart higher. Everybody remembers when Courtney Cox was that dancing in the dark. She was so cute. And then I believe it was there she came out, and then she got the little short role as Michael J. Fox's girlfriend or whatever on what's the show? Family Ties.
Family Ties.
Yeah,
I don't remember her from Family Ties, but I do remember that Misfits of Science came out pretty fast after that Dancing in the Dark video.
Oh, okay. But are you like me where your first memory was seeing her in the Dancing in the Dark video?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Okay, because her eyes lit up, right? These beautiful blue eyes. And it was just like, I was like, oh my God, yeah, she's, wow, really super skinny, whatever. Super, super skinny, if you remember correctly. But those eyes were like, wow, man. A beautiful face, and I remember soon after seeing her, I'm like, hey, that's the Dancing in the Dark girl or whatever, Yeah, it's kind of funny how that happens sometimes.
Well, it's funny too. So when Madonna had Alex, was it Garfield, Alex MacArthur, who was in the Papa Don't Preach video, and he had like a little fledgling acting career for a little while, but was immediately cast in William Friedkin's film, which didn't get released in the United States until years later in a very cut version, where he plays a serial killer. It's a really, really good film too, but that kind of sidelined his entire career. So he was hot out the gate and then cold immediately afterwards.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And yes, what's up, Gil? Good to see you. And then he made her a star. That's right. Love Misfits of Science, said Sonny.
Yep.
Sonny loved that. I don't think I saw that, to be honest.
It was the closest thing we had to an X-Men TV show, you know, back in the day.
Which
one? It was definitely before Misfits of Science. And it was, I think, before the X-Men were even appearing as guests in Spidey and His Amazing Friends. So, like, we didn't even have them animated at that point.
Are you referring to Misfits of Science?
Yes.
So I'm sorry. Can you give me the years that played?
Well, we all have little Univacs in our pockets, so let's look it up.
Because I mean, are we talking? So that was what, mid '80s, or are we talking?
Yeah, it's an '80s show. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, because it sounds like something that would have been from like back in the early '90s or late '80s.
It aired on NBC on October 4th, 1985.
Wow. Okay. Okay. And is it one of those shows that only lasted like a season? Is that why I don't really?
Yeah. I don't even think it went a full season. I think it was like, or they didn't buy a full season. It was an abridged season that they purchased.
Oh, that would explain probably why I'm wondering, like, it's vaguely familiar by name, but I'm thinking I can't picture it at all. So I'm wondering, did I ever even see it at all? You know, it was, I guess, obviously back in those days, there were only 4 networks. It was on one of those 4 main networks, obviously, right? It had to have been.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's interesting. Okay. And she was the star of it, or just like kind of like a secondary character?
She was part of the team. She was one of the main cast.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay. Well, good for Courtney Cox. She ended up having a great career. So there you go. Real quick, let me tell you guys. Sorry, I want to thank the people who have subscribed. I actually, again, it was pretty much all anonymous, except for, everybody say it with me now. Shout out to my newest sub, Der Kampfsberg Fota. That's not easy. I mean, Der Kampfsberg Fota. That's about
Auf Wiedersehen.
Huh?
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen. There you go. It's about as good as I can do, my friend, whoever you are. And I hope that you watch on Rewind, but I hope you come in live and say hello sometime. I appreciate you. And to the anonymous among you that subscribed, I appreciate you as well. So thank you. Also wanted to, real quick, I got another promo here. Might as well do that before we get into this. So there's 2 here. And I don't want these to stick together, though. I think when you put 2, they kind of end up, they don't have a space. So here's for Carl. Carl's not here right now, as far as I know. His first one that's coming in right now. And then here's another one. His 2 latest videos. So I'm not going to tell you what they're about. Go check them out. They're a lot of fun. And yeah, man, Carl's channel has been growing. Carl Sodergren, that is. That's from Carl's collection. He actually hit 300. He hit 300 subscribers recently. But then he lost a couple, like everybody tends to do. And he's at 298 now, but still essentially 300. So he's been growing quickly. So there you go with that. And you said, can you demonstrate how you made your root beer float? I cannot. And there were only 3 networks back then. No. Oh, Fox hadn't started by 84?
I
Pretty
guess
sure.
you'd have to. When's the Tracy Ullman show?
Oh God, wasn't that like 88 or 89 or 87?
Then
like,
he's correct, because that's the launch of the Fox as a network. It's pretty much the Tracy Ullman show.
Okay. Okay. And Stanley, yes, we talked about it. You came late. That's why you don't know. You didn't hear me talk about it. And okay, Sonny's telling us Fox 88 or 89.
87.
Oh.
April 5th, 1987. So that, yeah, so Misfits of Science was when there were pretty much only 3 networks and PBS.
Okay.
Because you got to count PBS.
I mean, major networks, I always count it as 4. So I don't count PBS as a major network, you know?
The public broadcasting system? I mean...
Come on, man. Come on. There's a reason. Well, there's a reason why...
Well, they have different programming. So, like, you could have one PBS affiliate in Philadelphia wouldn't have the same lineup of shows at the same time as PBS affiliate in Boston or Denver or Chicago or San Francisco. So, it's funny when you look at a lot of the early, like the shows that we know as PBS shows, you know, like Sesame Street or, you know, shows the Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. A lot of those were produced specifically from a PBS affiliate out of Pennsylvania, and with a lot of funds from the PBS affiliate in Boston. And New York shows had different stuff. I ended up working 15 years ago with a station whip to do an animated educational math program at PBS stations. Was it Zula Patrol? Which was an education.
Because the like Sesame Street in the 70s when I watched as a little kid, that certainly was, from what I recall, a PBS show, not a major network type show or whatever. You know?
Sesame Street, Electric Company, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood,
Beating Rainbow.
Captain Kangaroo in some affiliates, but Captain Kangaroo was also on some local syndicated channels as well. Someone named Doctor Who. Doctor Who was certainly something I saw on PBS for the first time. Monty Python was something I saw on PBS for the first time. Masterpiece Theater, you know, a lot of stuff like that. The McNeil Lehrer News Hour was PBS.
Oh, I know that one.
Yep.
Not that I ever watched it, you know, as a kid. Who would be watching that, obviously, right? But yeah, I do remember it for
Nova.
sure.
Nova was
Nova. PBS show. Yeah, that's absolutely Nova. Yeah, Red Dwarf. Look at all these.
Red Dwarf we didn't get in Boston, so that might not have gone wide syndication. I think that was on a couple of affiliates.
WGN. Yeah. But okay, so just before McLaughlin Group. Okay, now you're going over my head. Mr. Rogers was from WQED in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Look at that, TJ.
Yep. See, I told you, Pennsylvania.
Benny Hill. I used to love Benny Hill as a kid.
Yeah.
Oh my God, who didn't? You know, Mr. PBS or Nickelodeon, that I don't know. Mr. Wizard, that I don't even. I mean, I don't know. Not only do I not know the answer, I don't even know Mr. Wizard. So I'm gonna go with Nickelodeon because I didn't used to get Nickelodeon. That was Nickelodeon didn't come into Canada like until kind of later, kind of thing. Or maybe it did, but you had to pay for it or whatever the case was. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you guys, what's up, Monkey Boo Boo?
Nickelodeon was a basic cable station, so you would have had to pay for it. Yeah.
I did want to say real quick to Marcus and TJ and whoever else mentioned it, because last Sunday, you know, I mentioned I talked a bit about the root beer floats again. So I just thought I thought I'd show you this because the very next day this happened. Okay, I gotta tell you, there we go. All right, so that happened the very next day. But before you go thinking that it's because I acquired a taste for it, it's just because when I did the first one the previous week,
you had leftovers.
I had frozen 2 mugs.
Right.
I had frozen 2 mugs thinking Arwen would have one with me, but then she told me she hates root beer, so I left because it tastes like medicine. So I left the other one in the freezer thinking whatever. And then on Monday, this past Monday, I decided, okay, it's already frozen, it looks pretty cool, let me do it just because it looks kind of cool. Whatever. And that was it. I did eat and drink it. I don't know what do you even call that anyways? Do you eat it or you drink it? Because you're kind of doing both. You're having it, I guess.
Consuming
it, yeah. So I did consume it, whatever. But I can't say it was like, you know, again, any better than the first time. It's just weird and interesting. Like I'll say, it's more fun than it is tasty. I'll say that. You know, so I'll give you that. Let's leave it there. Maybe next summer I'll try it again in the midst of summer when it's super sweaty hot, and I'll see if it's really as refreshing as some of these guys claim it is. You know, that's it. Okay, so I think we're going to get into it. Last few comments. So You Can't Do That on Television is a Canadian show on Nickelodeon. Yes, I know that. I never used to watch it. I was too old for it, but you're right about that. I'm going to hit puberty right after that. Cinemax had that one movie where they say it's a snapper. I'm not familiar with that one. Ken Burns' Civil War, says Steve, was huge. It certainly was, and I never saw it. I never had the time, even though I did watch the 9-inning baseball documentary by Ken Burns. But of course, I was a massive baseball fan, so I had to, see that. And then I bought it twice, VHS.
Before Civil War, I believe the show that put Ken Burns on the map was Vietnam, the 10,000 Days War. And so Frontline documentaries started as PBS-funded documentaries. I believe they went to ABC at a certain point. Yeah, so there's a lot of that type of stuff.
Right.
But we could talk about that all day. That's a whole other show.
Yeah, for sure. And last comment, you can always use Orange Crush. Yeah, but what would that do? That would make it taste like an
orange float. Yep. That's
do you guys have those popsicles called creamsicles, or is that a Canadian thing?
No, we have them.
Okay, yeah. Then it would taste kind of more like that, But always stir it until it becomes a root beer shake. You can watch Extra Innings for it too. Extra Inning. When I replaced my VHS on DVD, it came with that Extra Inning.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's awesome. Ken Burns' jazz was also killer. Really?
Well, except that Branford Marsalis was his guy. And there's some people that don't like the history of jazz through the lens of either the Marsalis brothers. So it was a little bit controversial. I really enjoyed it, but you have to recognize that there's definitely a lot of controversy that those were the guys that sort of gave him the history of jazz. It could have come from a lot of other people, a lot of other people whose knowledge of the history of jazz definitely exceeds the Marsalis brothers, but a very, very well-made show. I still have the box set soundtrack.
Oh, there you go. Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, I that's one genre of music I've never been able to get into. I'm not a jazz fan. I don't mind saying it. It is what it is. I love documentaries, and I've loved many documentaries that I purposely watched, even though it was on a subject that I don't normally care about, just because I love documentaries. And oftentimes they end up being good, right? Mm-hmm. In this case, I have to ask you, try to put aside the fact that you may be a jazz fan, right? And look at it objectively from my point of view. Given what I've already told you, that I love documentaries, always have loved many documentaries, even when the topic was not something I normally like. Okay, so that's 2 pluses right there. My concern is, given how long, I'm assuming it's one of those Ken Burns long monster ones. If it is, would you really recommend that? Like, do you think I would still like it?
I think you would. I think that Ken Burns is an amazing documentarian.
Yes,
and he's much more, because a lot of what he covers is archival, so he's not making the same types of documentaries, say, that Errol Morris is making, and both of them are on one side, and then you have people like Michael Moore on the other side who start out with a premise and then make a documentary that fulfills their premise, rather than tackling the subject and letting the subject and the information they collect steer the narrative. These are very different approaches to documentaries. You would say that Michael Moore's approach is more akin to reality television. But yeah, I think that, any time you can dedicate to a subject that Ken has tackled is worth watching. It will still be interesting and it will pace well. Yeah.
Oh, and nice one. That's one that I actually would probably watch first, just because of the topic. Maki Pupu brings up. I have his Vietnam series on video.
Yeah, that's the first one. That's Vietnam, the 10,000 Days War. That was really the series that put Ken Burns on the map as far as a documentarian. Yeah.
Oh, so that came before baseball.
Yeah, and before the Civil War.
Oh, okay. Because I love the whole Vietnam era. I don't know. Somehow I grew up with it. I guess probably because as a kid in the late 70s, we had where I lived at the time, which actually, funny enough, was just a few blocks away from where I'm currently living. There was, 1979 I'm talking about. I had just moved to this area, and suddenly there was all this Vietnamese immigration coming, and, all these Vietnamese people suddenly in our area. I was like, well, what's happening? What's going on? And that's how I learned about the Vietnam War for the first time, and then, of course, seeing a lot of movies and then a lot of documentaries, and then realizing that so many of my favorite 60s rock songs had to do with the Vietnam War era and protesting and all that, So I've always been very fascinated by it. So that's a documentary, I guess. I mean, the thing is I don't know if I should waste the precious few, the time that I have. Not to say that it would be a waste, but meaning I've already over the decades seen so many things, including many documentaries on the Vietnam War. So it's like, do I need to see another one just because it's by Ken Burns? You know what I mean? So that's kind of the thing. It's like, time's a privilege right now. So it's like, I got to be careful with what I want to, invest the time into, So, yeah. But let's get this started, everybody. Yes, rest in peace, Chris Christopherson. Yeah, passed away. We were just talking about it earlier before we went live. And John Stockton had the best jazz hands. Ruben sings the blues. My old manager was in the Navy during the war. During that war, I guess you mean? I feel the most recent Ken Burns documentaries are Ken Burns in name only. Ooh, that's not a good comment about his documentaries. For what it's worth, it's music again. The first documentary series I watched was BBC's World at War. Heavy stuff for 9-year-old. What's up, Mark? Good to see you. Yeah, that's for a 9-year-old watching that kind of stuff. It's pretty heavy subject matter for sure. So, for what it's worth, we need to change to live beats. World at War was fabulous. Yeah, still a great source of interviews from key figures. Lots of music was evocative. Yeah. So, okay. Anyways, let us get back on topic, everyone. Watch the Henson documentary. I don't know if I want to. I watched Muppets as a kid, but then I kind of got, tired of it. I don't know. Again, I'm willing to spend the time if it's a standard documentary, more like, like a one episode or one movie.
90 minutes.
Yeah, 90 minutes, an hour, that kind of thing, right? Even 2 hours, whatever. Yeah, but these long form, multi-episodes.
Herman Woke deep dives. Remember Herman Woke's Hawaii? It opens with, and there is a rumbling of a volcano under the ocean, and then 1,200 pages later, you have people, in that book, where it's like prehistoric explanation of Hawaii. Sometimes these deep dives are a little too deep. What I do like about Ken is that he keeps it topical and he keeps it moving along. He's very, very good with pacing, and he knew, especially in his earliest documentaries, that since they were going to be on PBS, he knew that they needed to have segments where you could stop, go to commercial, and come back, and it wouldn't interfere with the flow of the documentary. But if you were to watch it without it being on television, you wouldn't necessarily notice it. It would just flow together.
Cool. All right. Well, we've had our usual fun with our various topics, left and right, all over the map, off the rails. So it's been awesome. Matt, are you ready to start getting into this?
Let's do it.
Okay. Well, as you very well know, we would love it if you would please make it official. Give us a little background on how you got into comics, when you got into comics, and then how it translated to you finding, discovering, and getting into original art.
Sure. So, comics. The first comics I remember even encountering, we didn't have comics necessarily lying around the house in the house I grew up in, and I'm the youngest of 6, so that's unusual. Yeah. I know that my sisters did read comics and they had them. I didn't see them. But when I started walking to the corner to buy milk and cigarettes for my parents, because this was the 70s and children could buy cigarettes, that you would see that spinning wire rack with comics on it. And of course, as a little kid, you become fascinated. Now, also in that era, Spider-Man was on television. Shortly thereafter, The Incredible Hulk was about to be on television. So, Star Wars was going to hit movie theaters really soon, and there was going to be those big Marvel Treasury editions in addition to the comic books themselves. So I was the right age and a voracious reader, so that comics were really, really very attractive to me. And the first comics I remember buying specifically were Werewolf by Night number 32, with the first appearance of Moon Knight. And I just saw that cover and I was like, that's amazing. I don't know who that. I thought that the werewolf was the bad guy, so I didn't understand why his name was on the title. And this awesome white costume dude that was throwing silver, crescents at this beast was considered, the bad guy or whatnot.
Because he's looking like the superhero, right?
Yeah. And so that was my first encounter with comic books. So I immediately embraced the anti-hero. I immediately embraced the villain. And the second comic I remember picking up at the newsstand was the issue of the Hulk in which he battles the Crypto Man and Jarella dies. Now, these are from two different eras. So I figured out years later that Darren, the son of the owners of this comic shop, would take his own comics from his collection and just stick them on the rack occasionally. And when you bought them on the register, he got to keep whatever money was generated from his own comic books. So I would see these 25 centers on the racks, and I had change, that I could keep some change to buy stuff for running the errands, and I could afford these 25 centers. I couldn't necessarily afford the 30-cent comics. And that kind of kicked off my interest in stuff. Now, I'm also an October baby, born in Salem, so Halloween is in my blood, so I always liked monster stuff. Also in Boston, WLVI TV 56 had the Creature double feature every Saturday morning. So I grew up watching the classic Universal stuff and the Hammer stuff cut for television, and the Toho and Daiei Giant Monster stuff. So this was all happening from probably like ages 6, 7, and 8.
But,
so
okay,
so my fascination.
But I'm curious at that age. I'm curious because you're at that age. You're already watching the Hammer stuff. I would assume that with the Hammer stuff, the initial intent is to see like monsters or whatever, Dracula, what have you, right? But then would you admit, because who knows, maybe yeah, maybe no, because at that age, not everybody's as advanced or whatever. Did you get taken in then by the titties?
Well, this was cut for television, so that stuff wasn't going to be on TV, so we got very edited versions of these on a regular, UHF station.
Because we had that.
Well, yeah, because you're French Canadians, it's like
no. I think it's because we have, England, the Brits and us were part of the what do you call it?
Cultural exchange, we'll say.
No. It starts with the C, but we have a long history with the Brits, right? Like that's why the Queen is in the
cooperation
is on our money and on our quarters or whatever, on one face of the quarters and what have you. But so maybe that's it because and for those who don't know, in England, they've always been far more liberal with nudity. There they have
very against violence. So it's where we got a lot, like violence wasn't cut as much on American television. American news was, also growing up in that era and talking about, the Vietnam War and seeing that on television as a little kid, that this aspect, my dad watched a lot of news, watched a lot of PBS. So I was also digesting all these documentaries. I was reading a lot of books about, Vlad Tepes, like soon after. Like at 8, 9 years old, my fascination with monsters just led me into reading a lot of stuff that was certainly not appropriate for other kids my age. My mother didn't have a problem with me reading that stuff because she just felt like it was expanding my vocabulary, that it was getting me ahead at school. And so, I wasn't really, that stuff wasn't blocked for me. My parents were also not parents who really interfered in the stuff I listened to or watched very much. So I could listen to, heavy metal. I could listen to punk as a very young kid, and not like be censored or be it wasn't something that I was not allowed to do. I did have other friends whose parents wouldn't let an Ozzy Osbourne record in their house. In New England, it's funny, there is still that puritanical hangover in a lot of Massachusetts to a degree to this day. But my fascination with witches, which is probably going to play a role in some of the stuff that you may have selected. I don't know what you've selected.
Maybe not.
But I've always been fascinated by witch and black cat art and pumpkins and that type of stuff. Now, that doesn't necessarily reflect in my comic art collecting, but it's there. It's in my head. That Halloween thing is very much a part of who I am. As you would start to see the leaves change colors, that meant, the summer would end, the leaves would change colors, and I knew my birthday was right around the corner. And then you would see pumpkins in windows. You would see macrame, witches hanging on people's doors. You would see all this horror themed stuff. So I knew I was going to get a treat. And I knew that I was going to get presents, and then I was going to get candy a couple weeks later. So it was like really, like, I think I'm almost genetically engineered to be into this stuff. And as far as illustration, I was, while also being a very voracious reader, I also like to draw a lot. I would draw a lot of what I saw, in the comics. I was at a certain point in my life a pretty good illustrator. I wanted to be a comic artist. I was never fast enough, and I was either way too satisfied with my work or not satisfied enough with it, so that I never felt like that was something I was going to pursue. Even by the time I was in junior high school, I was encountering kids that were much better at illustration than I thought that I was. And so I was already buying drawings from friends of mine. Now, in that same time frame in elementary school, I was also drawing and selling my drawings at lunch. So like I would draw caricatures of teachers. I got in trouble for it. My mom got called to the school because I had drawn this this naked body, and then I put my teacher's face on the body, and the principal called my mom in, and so I was supposed to be in trouble, and he showed these drawings to my mom that they had confiscated, some of which they had confiscated from kids who had paid me like 20 cents for them. And he was kind of like, "Mrs. Kennedy, what do you think of that?" And she's like, "Matthew did these?" He's like, "Yes." It's like, "Oh, these are pretty good." And he was like, what? Like not the reaction he had expected. So, and that's also interesting because my parents were very religious and went to church every Sunday. Right. So, I also grew up very religious as a kid, and as a lot of kids grew up to be not so religious after being religious. But that stuff's in there too. And when you think about art, and especially figurative art, a lot of the really great masterworks were church commissioned masterpieces. So because of the age I am, I would be seeing in art books.
Hell, make it official. Make it official if you don't mind. Tell everybody how old you are.
I'll be 53 next month.
There you go.
So, do I like Dan Brereton's art? I think he's all right.
It's kind of a weird question. I left it up there because I was hoping you would finally notice it, because I'm like, why is he asking that? Like, I know Dan did some.
He does a lot of Halloween themed art.
Halloween themed, yeah. I guess that's probably why. Yeah.
I guess I like more of the classic stuff, and certainly, I see someone's asking about the Ben Cooper costumes. I certainly had those as a kid. I also had I was also into special effects makeup and read all of those books and would make my own kind of like monster looks and gashes in my skin and screws in my forehead, and definitely gave my mother white hair, from like some of the gags that I would play. But you'd see like in these sort of like in the 70s, these were much more common than they are now, because everything is such a specialty that you don't see as many sort of overviews of all kinds of art, like these surveys. And one of the surveys that I had seen had everything from Da Vinci and Michelangelo all the way up to Salvador Dali. So I was seeing surrealism side by side with neoclassicism, and they're both very much, very painterly, very, very illustrated. And I mean, and you have to bring in Peter Paul Rubens, into that discussion, and those allegorical paintings, which I thought were really, really marvelous. And then also reading, because of being in Salem and about the witches, reading up on parapsychology and the occult. So like, I was really like in the right place at the right time to be who I am now. Like I don't know that I even had much choice, to be honest. I think that given 100 times, if you drop the same kid into the same neighborhood, that you would get me, like under other those other circumstances, those other influences. So horror art was definitely big for me. I became a huge Bernie Wrightson fan. Now, I dropped comics, as a lot of kids do, and went into action figures and Atari and stuff like that for a time. And then in the 80s, the TV show Simon and Simon had an episode that was built around a comic book, and that got me looking at my old comics, which I'd kept in really good condition. And to be honest, I still have that copy of Werewolf by Night number 32. I sent it in to get graded a few years ago. It came back in 9.0.
I know, that's crazy. That is so.
And I read the hell out of that. I mean, like, I read that thing a lot, but I had such reverence for the things that I owned. Like, I would very neatly, pack the boxes that my toys came in, and those would go on the bottom of my toy box, and the toys would go on top of them. Like, I kept everything in really, really good shape. So like, that kind of signaled to me, watching this CBS TV show that was on after Magnum PI, Two Brothers in San Diego, this comic book related story, that there was an issue that wasn't number one, that had the first appearance of a character. And I'm like, I think I have an issue that's the first appearance of a character that's not a number one. And I remembered that Moon Knight appearance, and I went and looked. And then I immediately, because it took place in a comic shop and stuff was super expensive, and I opened up the yellow pages and I looked up comic books, and there was nothing. And my dad said, well, they're not going to have them in a comic books, check bookstores. And so then I went, half an inch back, in the gigantic yellow pages, and saw that a couple of bookstores had ads that mentioned that they sold comics, and that they were in Lynn, Massachusetts, where I basically grew up. And so that next day I had a paper route. And so the next day after I finished my paper route, I rode my bike downtown, and I found the first comic book shop. And I was like, wow, this place is pretty amazing. But it was definitely more of a bookstore that had comics. And I kind of didn't know what I was looking for. And there wasn't a lot of kids in this place, which to me signaled this must not be the cool comic book shop. So I rode my bike further down the street and found this other comic book shop. And that other comic book shop, which is called Corner Bookstore, which is in Central Square in Lynn, Massachusetts, right under the train tracks, right across from the Daily Evening Item. Central Square was, at that point, like a hub of homelessness. It was not a good area. And I put my bike outside, up against, the wall.
Sure.
And I think it might have been snowing out, honestly, at that time. And I went in, and there was this very passionate conversation between a couple of people in the store. And one of the guys' names I picked up really quickly, his name was Tom. Another guy's name was Paul. And then there was this other kid that worked there whose name was Jimmy. And nobody had any respect for Jimmy. That was 100% evident. He was definitely closest in age to me. So Tom was Tom Snagowski, who'd wind up, writing a lot of stuff with, for Bone, for The Goon, for Mike Mignola, for Vampirella. He's still writing Vampirella now. So he was in college at the time. I was just starting high school, and so he was a regular there. And so like I would just listen, and I would hit the 3 for $1 bins, and I noticed all these amazing covers by a guy who signed his name Wrightson with a W. And so I just kept looking for more and more of these, and I'd bring them up, and I'd buy comics, and I'd leave, but I'd listen a little bit. I'd slow down my search so I could eavesdrop and listen to what they were talking about. And they were talking about Marshall Rogers Batman stories versus Neil Adams Batman stories, like all this stuff, and getting really, really heated about it. But they were clearly really good friends. And now I was buying G.I. Joe figures, and I saw that there was a G.I. Joe comic on the wall, and I had no idea there was a G.I. Joe comic. And this was like, there were maybe 14 issues out at this point. So it was like a year and a half old. It was, as I recall, $10. So $10 in child money in 1984 or 5 is like $50 in adult money.
Right.
And so in adult money now, maybe $120, you know? But so I was like, I had my paper route money. And so I saved up and I bought that G.I. Joe #1. And I brought it home, and it was in a plastic bag, you know, a plastic bag with tape. And it had a wraparound cover, as I recall. And I went home and I read it, and I was like, this is dog shit. This is terrible. This is, children shouldn't read this. Like, this is awful. And the color was terrible, because this is an early Baxter comic, and they really hadn't figured out like how to do coloring from newsprint to Baxter yet. It would take them really until the Prestige format several years later to really get that right.
But my memory, Matt, my memory of it is that Baxter G.I. Joe 1 was like pretty nice looking. I liked the feel of the paper. I liked the colors. It wasn't too bright.
Oh, I thought it was really, really bright. Like the yellows were super yellow.
But am I right? Am I remembering correctly? It was like a textured paper, not that slick white stuff that we've seen for the last 25, 30 years.
Right. No, it was early Baxter. So it was very early Baxter paper. Yeah. And then at that same time, I did not know this yet, but New Teen Titans was a Baxter comic. They were still running, I believe, Tales of the Teen Titans, was still running. And so I brought it back the next day, and very sheepishly with this comic between some of the newspapers in my newspaper delivery boy, shoulder sling, I walked in and I was like, hey, and this is the first time I really talked to them except to give them money and walk out. I walked up to this guy, Paul, who was the manager of the store, and I said, I bought this yesterday, and I know you probably don't accept returns or anything, but this is really just so awful and so badly written that I was hoping that I could return it. And so Sagowski's in there too, and they kind of give each other a look, and Paul's like, so what do you want to trade this for? And I was like, well, I heard him talking about Tom, right? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, I heard him talking about these Joker fish stories with Batman. I was hoping maybe I could trade them for that. And so they just gave each other a look like, one of us, the new generation is here. We've been waiting for you, And so
was the Batman? Are you talking about the Marshall Rogers Joker fish?
Yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Those probably would have been around the same value back then, right?
So they were $4.75 a piece.
Okay.
And this comic was $10.
Right.
And he was like, sure, I can sell this to somebody else. This isn't a problem. And then someone else was like, well, if you like this whole run of stories is the same artist, the same writer, they're all really, really great, but this is a good place to start. So they were super excited. And so, I went home and I read those and I was like, these are amazing. And that kind of really, that stopping and listening and not talking and just absorbing this for weeks before buying an expensive comic while buying cheap comics, and then entering into their world on their own terms and letting them know that I appreciated their taste was like, to me, a kind of internship. And then, of course, I would end up getting hired there because they could not wait to get rid of Jimmy, the other kid that was in the comic shop. But so it was like that kicked off everything. And that shop had originally been owned by Tim Cole. It had been sold. Tim Cole's kind of a local legend in the comic shop business in Massachusetts. And that really, that became my home away from home. It became my church. It was, these guys who are older guys really took me under their wing. And I was, most of my, experiences from that point, I had dated girls quaintly, in, junior high school. But the first time I ever really dated a girl, it was because she was the younger sister of a dude that went to that shop who was one of them who played Dungeons and Dragons with them. And and he was dating this really, really good looking coworker of his at Burger King, and her half sister was in town. And it was I can trace a lot of the really important moments of coming, from being a child and becoming a young man, really go in through comics and that shop and that experience. But, we also had a couple of fairly high profile creators that would come into that shop. So Steve Bissett, his first wife,
right.
I believe her parents were from Lynn, Massachusetts. And so he was in town a lot. And so they would book signings with him. Very, shortly after the, reading the Jokerfish stuff, I started picking up Sandman. I started picking up Mage. I started picking up American Flag. I started reading the X-Men and like really going back and reading the old X-Men, not even the contemporary stuff. And that kind of kicked everything off. And then shortly thereafter, Dark Knight Returns was getting published. Watchmen was coming out. Like, the first comic I actually paid more than cover price for was Twisted Tales #2, the Bernie Wrightson cover. And a friend of mine bought Alien Worlds #2, the Dave Stevens cover. And so the Pacific Comics was like adultish. Like that was like certainly not meant for children. And so we loved the hell out of that. And then we were buying Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and all that stuff. But that's kind of it. And, that got me in, and I ended up buying a piece of artwork from Steve Bissett. You want to be lumped in. Jimmy read ElfQuest, and that did not bode well for how he was, we'll say disrespected from the other people in that shop, all of whom played Dungeons and Dragons, by the way. So it wasn't like a fantasy thing. It was that they really just didn't like ElfQuest.
Hold on a second. Because, I've mentioned many, many times that, I got no more room for trades and whatnot, and I got them all piled up. Oh, look up. You see this phone book, everybody?
There it is.
I will say, in fairness, I only ever read I think it was the first 2 issues that Marvel Epic put out.
When they reprinted it, yeah.
Back in '85, I think it was. And not again. But I stopped only because, as per usual, I had no money. I'd rather get superheroes. But my memory of it, I remember nothing about the story, but my memory was that I enjoyed the issues and I would like to have had continued reading if I could have afforded to. So I talked with a couple of friends who were like, "Oh my God, yeah, that was a really, really good series. The whole series was really good. Like they have it in a big phone, book version. Like you should try it." I'm like, "Oh, what the hell? Okay, let's, there you go." So you're laughing at it, Matt, but I don't mind embarrassing myself.
No, I'm not. I'm saying that Jimmy loved ElfQuest and they made fun of Jimmy. I didn't say I didn't like ElfQuest, but and certainly like in high school, in 9th grade, there was a girl in my homeroom who was an ElfQuest fan. She read ElfQuest, and so there was that sort of like common ground, which to me wasn't enough common ground, and I was kind of a dick. But that's a whole other thing. I really respect Wendy and Richard Pini, and I used to see them at shows all the time, and they both used to cosplay, and that was pretty great. I preferred Cerebus, and in the early days, Cerebus wasn't, church and state. It was very much a parody of whatever Marvel was doing at the time. So it was like really it was like Cracked or Marvel using the same cast of characters. It was like Saturday Night Live as a comic book. And I have great respect from that. Actually, the very first price guide I ever bought was a magazine called Comic Book Collector, and I believe issue #1. It was issue #1 and #2, and it had ElfQuest on the cover. And so because it was a price guide, I held on to it. So like that was something I had in my collection for decades, really. I didn't really start buying the Overstreets until much, much later, until I'd really amassed a pretty large collection, as you tend to do when you work in a comic book shop. But I also wasn't really collecting a lot of contemporary stuff. I got very into the EC comics. So I started like buying old EC comics at swap meets and stuff like that. And really had an amazing, Bronze Atomic Age, pre-code horror collection as like a 15, 16-year-old kid. I have pictures of me in my bedroom where there's like EC comics like taped, in milers to my wall, like as part of my display of like, my personality is this, Watchmen, Sex Pistols, Metallica, EC comics, so it's that had always appealed to me. Seeing those black and white Watchmen posters was another element of like endearing me to the original artwork, because I realized that it wasn't just all done at once. Like I think until you know that, Like until you see original artwork, you don't realize that it's penciled and then it's inked, maybe by 2 different people. And then that gets photographed and sent to somebody else who colors it on a piece of paper that's half the size of that original artwork that's the same size as a comic book. And knowing and seeing Steve Bissett's work and seeing like the published pages, panel pages, was a real education. And it kind of gave me an insight into, you know, how the sausage was made. And then that really fascinated me. And I changed my collecting habits away from buying comics and more into trying to buy original artwork. And I would like get drawings from Eastman and Laird, you know, from Larry Welts. I never got an Arthur Adams drawing. And it's so weird to me because when he hit the hobby, he was absolutely my favorite comic artist. I still, when I think about who were like the most influential in why I liked comics, that yeah, this Bernie Wrightson is going to be number one. He'll be number one forever. Dave Stevens is probably not even number 2. Like I think Arthur Adams probably would be number 2. Now I like and always loved Dave Stevens more, but it was rarer. You know, he didn't do a lot of work. Not that Arthur did a lot of work.
Not that Arthur did a lot too. Exactly.
Yeah. But he lived, you know, 25 minutes away from me, and I used to see him at shows, and I would talk to him, and it was depressing. Like he would talk about how'd you get so good? Well, I have no friends, and I used to just kind of sit on my porch and draw the world around me. And I'm like, I don't want that life. You know, I knew at 14 that was not the life I wanted. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like the most successful comic book creator I know. You know, because I didn't know a whole bunch of them. You know, I knew the guy that did the Tick. You know, and I knew Steve, and I had met Rick Veitch, I think, at that point, and I knew some of the like sort of underground, like black and white press people. And Eastman and Laird were way cooler, you know, just as individuals, you know, people loving life, than, you know, Arthur Adams had been at that point. But his artwork is, especially in that era, is extraordinary. I sort of, when I see the drawings that he kind of like churns out these days, it kind of bums me out because I just don't think it's the level that it was. He's still an amazing technician, but his layout is different. Like he's not doing interesting things. He's just like appeasing a fan base, and it's very transactional. And every once in a while you see one that's really, really good, but a lot of them are just kind of like, I wouldn't know one from the other. And when it came to collecting pages, that type of consistency, which is what I think actually makes comic art valuable, being consistent, even if you're not super dynamic, didn't appeal to me. So like when I moved to California and I got a job at the comic shop that I sold my collection to, and we were buying comic art from Scott Dunbier. We were buying like entire issues of Shade the Changing Man. We bought the first and second issues of Lobo's Back, Simon Bisley. We split those with Glenn Danzig. Glenn gave me Jack Kirby's phone number and address. I made appointments to go see Jack. I would take 3 buses from Hollywood and Highland out to Thousand Oaks, and there was a bit of a walk, sometimes even between bus routes, but certainly the last bus and then the walk to where Jack and Roz lived was a good, 15, 20 minutes walk after that last bus. And, bought some stuff from Jack. He was just great. He was a little curmudgeonly, but he was also like very like the curmudgeon was a character. Like he was doing this curmudgeonly character for like the young guy, but you could tell he was just a really, really nice dude. And Roz was fantastic. Never met any of the kids. And did see piles of artwork, in the house. He had just gotten back a lot of Marvel stuff at that. He'd won his lawsuit. Remember every Eclipse comic was, it's Marvel's 25th anniversary. What about Jack? And, so not only was he not getting credit, not getting like residuals, he was not getting his artwork back. His artwork was still trapped at Marvel, and people were just giving it away every day that he didn't get it back. But that then getting the first Kirby page, which was a splash page from Captain America Bicentennial, a Marvel Treasury edition, was again like, okay, why would I buy comics ever again when I can own something like this? And
you've having been on my channel on various different episodes of my other shows, you've gone through this. We've talked already about this, but I did want to get it for the record because everybody gives me their kind of little origins, their tale of woe from back in the day, you know, on the show and tell. So I wanted to get it for the record and on a little bit here. So yeah, so that's what I kind of wanted to jump to if we could. The discovering of original art and starting to buy it. So that's pretty cool. But if you want to continue with that, that's cool. But just
I think that gets us up to date. You know, I think that really that sets us up, maybe even for some of the pieces that you've selected. You know, just that explanation, and again, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, if you're ready to bring in some pieces, I'm happy to talk about them.
Okay, sounds good. So yeah, just before we do that, give me a sec here. I saw somebody said something about. Let me see. We have Stanley asked much earlier. Do you ever return back to Salem from time to time?
I went back for a high school my 30th high school reunion about 5 years ago. And I would like to go back more. My godmother just passed away on Friday, and
sorry to hear, man.
We knew it was going to happen, and so everything was really rushed. The funeral was even on Saturday. There was no way I was going to make it back in time. If I had had a few more days, I would have flown back for that, and I would have stayed for quite a few days. But most of my family's not really there anymore. Like my cousins are. I have cousins, and a lot of my high school friends are still in the area. But there's like, I don't have that hub. Like the house I grew up in sold, 25 years ago. And so when I go back, I might stay with my brother who's in New Hampshire. But the whole music thing's another thing, Marcus. We don't have time for that. That's a whole other thing. But and it was music that brought me out to California, which is funny. But and then I would like to go back. I guess the short answer is I would if it were up to me, I would go back to Salem every fall. But now, because Halloween is such a big deal, and it wasn't when I was a kid. Like they didn't figure out that Salem could be the capital of Halloween until about 1995, and I was, at that point, 5 years gone. I was already in LA, and most of the comic artists, even though the publishers were in New York, most of the artists were in Los Angeles. So like, I used to see Lee Field around all the time. I knew all the guys over at Top Cow. A girl I dated in the mid 90s, her best friend got an inking internship with Michael Turner. She ended up dating, one of the pencils over there for years. And like, that's back when they were, in that alleyway off of 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica. Like that was a kind of amazing time. That was like the top of the industry, when X-Men comics, that first X-Men comic sold like 10 million copies, and Spawn was selling 3 million copies on a pretty regular basis. But again, like, was any of that stuff any good? Like, I don't know. Like my favorite Jim Lee page is in issue 2 of X-Men. It's a great double, like it's a half splash, but they're side by side panels. And it's Psylocke getting out of the pool, and Scott and Jean in like these chase lounge chairs, poolside, and he's clearly looking at Psylocke, and you can see Jean's about to like smack him or something, like, and it's like this kind of like, that's the type of thing that would become a meme on the internet years later. But at this instance, like, that was very interesting panel design to me, and I really, really loved it. But I wasn't reading the comic for any value to it. Like, it just wasn't for me anymore. I had definitely shifted into the Vertigo stuff, and to an extent, even into other independent or even more old stuff. So like getting really interested in Charles Vess, and fantasy illustrators that were doing comics. Reading Sandman, but really reading Shade the Changing Man, which I think was the best of the Vertigo comics because it's one story. Sandman was to a large degree an anthology for a while.
As a series of stories is what you mean, kind of thing?
But also, like, Sandman wasn't really a very important character in his own comic after, like, the first 6 issues. Like, he would kind of, like, pop in and be like, Dream, the character Dream.
Oh, really?
In Sandman wasn't really an important character in his own comic. He would occasionally pop in, and there would be lore, and I was more into the Death character than I was into Dream.
Is that why Death is so popular even today? Is it because she became more the focus of the series?
And she was the first person to get a spinoff.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, it's also a hot goth girl. I mean, like that's not rocket science. I mean, she became popular because that character was always going to be popular. But the fact that it was written by Neil Gaiman, who was at his peak prowess probably at that point, and being illustrated by some of the most talented illustrators in comics, and then with Pichello getting the nod to be the artist on Death, who had been doing such a fantastic job on Shade the Changing Man. That was significant. When he then went to work for Marvel and did Generation X, it's a beautiful looking comic. It's actually not that bad either, going back and reading it. But I remember thinking, like, why would you do that? Like, you're in like one of the best titles, two of the best titles in comics, and Death is like one of the all-time best miniseries. Why would you work for Marvel? Like, to me, it just seemed weird. But then at that point, that was also after my death tattoo incident, which we're probably going to talk about.
Well, you've told us that whole story in another one of your previous appearances, so we already know about that. That's a crazy story in and of itself, for sure.
Yeah.
Real quick, but we got to get into it. I want to say that Kavi earlier mentioned he thanked you for the very detailed background info, so that was very nice. And Mark is just asking, having met the Kirbys, did you ever have a problem buying Kirby art from dubious sources? I mean, I know he's just jacking around, whatever. But
no, this is a really important question when it comes to collecting comic art. But in 1991, what was a dubious source? I didn't really even understand, probably until 2013, that all that Neil Adams artwork I saw that was hitting auctions and getting $150,000 was basically stolen from him by the publisher. Like, I thought that the whole Jack Kirby thing was they were holding it up because they were mad at him. Like that they were hanging on to it because they had a dispute and this was like a bargaining chip in their dispute. I didn't understand even then. And the only person I ever bought Jack Kirby artwork from was Jack Kirby.
Mm-hmm.
Other people that I knew that bought comic art from him as well, we would sometimes sell stuff together, like Glenn Danzig, who was buying stuff from Jack. Ray Zone, when he passed away, Johnny Zone had me handle the estate, and I moved that art straight over to Heritage, basically. So it had gone through my fingers, but I did not purchase it. I sold it, and it wasn't great Kirby stuff. It was like, 3D World stuff.
Yeah.
But, that's a really important aspect when it comes to collecting Bronze Age art, Silver Age art, way less so after the Bronze Age. At that point, artists knew that the art was theirs. I asked Neil how he felt about, his artwork hitting these percentages. And I'm like, hey, if it sells in California, they got to pay you the 10% artist royalty rate, which I don't think he was aware of, to be honest.
Good. Yeah, but good luck with that, though. Good luck making that happen.
No, it would have been very easy at that point. If it sold in California, California would automatically take a escrow from the sale of the artwork if it sold at auction. Now, here's the deal.
That's if it's selling at a, like a Sotheby's type auction or what have you. If it's some
not even that, Ruben. Not even that. Because Sotheby's is in New York, not California. The resale royalty was only in the state of California, and their auctions are not held in California. Even Heritage.
But don't they have an office there?
They might. I'm sure they do, because they have Sotheby's real estate. But that doesn't count as the area of the sale. And so there are several criteria that was connected to that law. And I don't think it's a law anymore. I don't think it got re-ratified. New York ended up passing a similar law. So it's a 5% royalty, not 10%. It's only for artwork $1,000 or more, and only if that artwork sold for more than its previous sale.
Okay.
So
that's covering the bases that people were talking about initially, right? Where the first thing was like, well, what are you talking about? If I take it and I sell it and I took a loss on it, why would I pay you any money? I just took a lot, right? So I guess they started looking at those things and got a little more realistic about the, likelihood.
If they knew, if if that was going to make it into law, then it was going to have to appease everyone, but really the auctioneers. And so, like, now running a gallery in Los Angeles, I understood that, and even before I was running that gallery, it was something that I was conscious of just from doing business in Los Angeles. But certainly by 2013, I had decades of experience in finding artists' royalties. Donald Roller Wilson, you know, the guy that paints dogs in very humanesque portraits, very realistically, famous artist from Louisiana. I tracked down, I became aware of a sale of his work that he had not been paid for that was sitting in escrow in the state of California for him. He was very, very thankful. He sent me a nice little note. Would routinely do it for Robert Williams, you know, the surrealist painter, pop surrealist painter. Right. So staying up on that stuff is important. Dubious sources. I mean, now there's a lot of dubious sources, and it's just really hard to track like where it came from. And, you know, just like any kind of theft that took place in the past, where do you start with reparation? Like, how do you do it? It's complicated.
Yeah, that's just whatever. Yeah. Okay, man. Let's get into this. Why don't we start the show with Tell? And perfect timing. Kavi's yelling at me. So, yeah, that's a good segue, man. And just a very quick yes or no. Stanley asks, were you ever a comic art dealer or rep?
Yes and yes.
All right, there you go. Come on, Stanley, like, he's been on a million times. I mean, he was like a gallery. Come on, like, come on, dude. Like, how do you not know? I think you're just asking questions to ask questions now. How do you not know Matt's background, man? He's talking.
Not everybody necessarily, not the silent majority in the chat may not know this. I may be new to them. Who knows? Thank you, Stanley. Thank you for asking the question.
But Stanley, you know, we know how he is. That's why, you know, you can never be sure with him. All right. Freewheeling Franklin was a dubious source. Let's go. It says Comic Art Boston. You should show Matt's crib video he did for CAF. It's already been shown, so why would I show it? You know.
And it's on my channel. You can go to the Pop Sequentialism YouTube and see it there.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly, Kavi. Exactly. Stanley's just extending the runtime. Had a great soundtrack, and Matt wearing the robe. Well, there you go. It's shown. If you ever want to do one specifically to show on my channel first, that's fine. But, you know, why be redundant about it, you know?
Right.
All right. Okay, so let's cue this up, everyone. Appreciate you all sitting in. Those of you who are here live and those of you watching on Rewind as well. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening in. And now we are going to begin the show and tell portion of tonight's show and tell. And we will cue this up and start off by showing the first piece, which is this one.
I won that at an auction.
Okay.
So Mike Kaluta, who was, again, one of that group of 4 whose artwork I was buying out of the 3 for $1 bin. You know, when I first walked into that first comic book shop that I became aware of in Massachusetts. You know, there was a lot of great House of Mystery covers by Bernie Wrightson, but there was a lot of great House of Mystery covers by Mike Kaluta. And Mike Kaluta and I have the same initials, and my signature was already very similar to his, which was really surprising and cool. And got to meet him on a couple of occasions, and just always really appreciated his art. I am a death collector. I was a very deep death collector in the early 90s, and unburdened myself of a lot of that stuff, and it's now become the major focus of my comic collecting now. I'm old school goth. I worked at Helter Skelter, you know, the most important goth club in LA's history. You know, I'm very connected to that type of music. Now in my professional life in the film distribution business, I work with Cleopatra Records for their video distribution. They, of course, very connected to the goth scene in Los Angeles and globally. And this piece was this happened to be in a heritage auction, and I saw the price on it, and it just seemed low. And, you know, this was published in one of the Heroes, like ash cans that they did to raise money for the the Heroes, what is it, Collective?
The Hero Initiative.
Yes, the Hero Initiative.
Yes.
And so 2 important characters, you know, from the game and verse, Lucifer and Death. So to me, this was a no-brainer. It was a really easy piece for me to buy. It was, I think, probably the 5th or 6th Kaluta piece of Kaluta artwork I had owned in my life, and I still own 2, and this is certainly one of them. But that studio book, you know, that Dragon's Dream published, was very seminal. Owning that book really, really opened me up more to Barry Windsor Smith, really, than the rest of them. I was familiar with Jeff Jones. He had done that great Elric cover to Starburst. And I've been reading the Michael Moorcock Elric books. I took Elric as my confirmation name in Roman Catholicism, which, you know, the cardinal, the archbishop at the time, Bernard Law, who had become Cardinal Law and become very famous, or infamous, I should say, for his involvement in moving priests around who had done bad things. I remember said my name back to me, Elric. And I was like, yes. And he didn't ask me anything else about it. He gave me the whole, you know, sign of the cross, and that was that.
Yeah. That's funny. And speaking of Elric, I actually happen to know someone whose name is Elric. Imagine.
That's great.
Yeah. Pretty cool, right? Very nice, man. Very nice. And you, I don't know. I know you don't have a tendency, Matt, to look at the bottom left of the screen and notice usually a lot of the comments that I post up on the screen. But a bunch of people said it was very lovely. A lot of people love the piece as well. So,
oh, cool.
A lot of fans of the Kaluta first piece of the evening. It's a good way to start. So, I think so. Anyways, I hope so. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Let us keep it rolling and go to the next piece. And for this, interesting because everybody. It's funny. Everybody thinks of you as, he likes a lot of this non-mainstream stuff, whatever. But I mean, a lot of you, if you guys actually take a closer look at Matt's collection, he does like a lot of, not only does he like a lot of mainstream stuff, but like he likes a lot of modern day, contemporary mainstream stuff, you know? So It's funny. You have kind of this reputation for being a certain type of collector, and it doesn't jive with, there's truth to it, but it doesn't quite jive, with what everybody thinks that, because they also think at the same time, he's non-mainstream guy, but that's not really true, So,
well, I think people think I'm a snob, and I think I do a lot to persist that opinion because I say what I say about G.I. Joe and Spawn and stuff like that. And I know that some people are very connected to that because the ages they were at when they read it. And they have a very different experience with it than I do. But, like, as you can see in back of me, that entire wall is Nightwing, basically. Like, there's a couple of John Kent pieces, but it's almost entirely Nightwing. And all of those pieces are, I don't think there's a single piece there that's older than 5 years. I just really fell in love with that Bruno Redondo run on Nightwing. Most of those pieces are digital, so that they are artist proofs. There's a couple of originals on that wall. And to me, as a guy who was always, it had to be original, it had to be, hand rendered, that was a huge step away from how I collected. Like, the fact that I own digital pages is probably the most shocking thing to most people who have an idea of who I am. Because that's the least snobby thing you can collect,
exactly.
like in a way.
Exactly. I mean, not only is it mainstream and contemporary, like super contemporary, it's, in the eyes of most, not even original art, right? And you're still buying it, and you've made that clear again on my channel, right? So we've had this discussion, and so hopefully tonight they'll get a better picture and realize that, hey, it's true, it's not quite what we think of him as, So with that being said, speak of the devil, let's take a look at the second piece. Check this out.
Yeah, that's an analog piece. Tyler Kirkham, obviously a super talented guy, also a very versatile guy. And I loved the character of John Kent in this era. And the Super Sons, I thought, was just a really wonderful comic that was aimed at kids the age of those characters. And I kind of feel like they made him grow up too fast, which was a great disservice to having decades of great stories of keeping him young the way that we keep every character the same age. You know, like, have we really aged Wolverine, you know, since the day we met him?
Oh, yeah.
He's pretty much the same age, you know, like not much has changed. You know, has Superman really gotten older? You know, he's gotten a few years older, I guess. But, you know, I just always love this piece. And it's just such a contemporary version of, you know, a son of Krypton. You know, he's got a cell phone. He's like, you know, showing his dad a picture of something he's going to post online probably. His outfit is a jumpsuit. You know, it's basically like a sweatshirt. And it's just a charming illustration. But it's so much of the now. It's such a piece of artwork that could only be done in the era in which it takes place because it addresses technology. And, you know, I love title pages. I like title pages more than covers. And I like final pages a lot as well. I think that they're important in the hobby as far as things that you might collect. I also liked, trying to think, who is it that wrote this? This was Dan Jurgens was writing at this point, you know, someone who was very famous for being an illustrator of Superman stories. And I liked his writing. You know, it was everything it needed to be. It certainly wasn't Alan Moore. It certainly wasn't Neil Gaiman, but there was something really charming about it. And it's the type of comics that you hope that DC always publishes, and they just really don't anymore.
Yeah. No, it's very, very fun. Yeah, I love it too. I love the whole thing about, you know, having the very up-to-date iPhone, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's, yeah, it's very of its time, very contemporary. And
bearded, black costume Superman, you know, you know, really specific era. Yeah, the hair, you know, just the way that Tyler does his line work. Tyler draws a smile better than most people.
Yeah.
Like, it's expressive.
Okay. Yeah, I just, yeah, it just stuck out to me a lot. And I thought it was fun, you know.
Yep.
I thought that, you know, for many years now, I've kind of been just trying to focus on just doing things in the hobby that are fun, you know, whether that's, you know, doing this with you guys, or even in my collecting, it's kind of fun to get a piece that, you know, costs very little, and it's all about just because it's just a fun thing to look at, you know.
That's my favorite thing, though. So, like, you just really tapped into something. And so I would hope, you know, I think we take for granted, right, that the people who watch your show are comic art collectors. You know, like that they're already us, that they're already people that have tons of these books full of pages, and maybe some of them are framing stuff, and maybe some of them are, you know, not framing stuff, or they're putting photocopies on the wall. We won't get into that. But like that everybody already knows. And I think that you do pick up people that are interested in art collecting that haven't dipped their toe in yet. They want to. They kind of want to know how. And one thing that we don't cover a lot, except when you do the occasional sale, is how do you get work? Like, how do you pick up pieces? Where do you buy stuff? My favorite pieces, like the pieces that right now mean a lot to me, didn't cost me much. And one of my all-time favorite pieces, a piece I don't think I will ever sell. I mean, even if I sold everything else, and it fits almost none of the other stuff that we've discussed, is I think it cost me $120, and I love it. I love it. You know, and it's a published page. It's from a Batgirl comic. Not a spectacularly written Batgirl comic, but I do love Chris Wildgoose's version of Batgirl. And it just has this amazing sense of flow and motion. It captures a type of illustration that you have to be of a certain level to be able to do. And here's a guy that's not super well known. Like, his artwork should be selling for a lot because he's that damn good.
Yeah.
But he hasn't landed a title that I think is resonating. And I mean, this is maybe a subject for another day. And the truth of the matter is, I don't think superhero comics are really resonating that much with people anymore. I think that a lot of us who are buying Batman stuff, we're buying older stuff. We're not necessarily buying new stuff. There's a couple of big names that are still writing these stories. They can't hold a candle, I don't think, to the stories from maybe 10 years ago or more. And the interest in it seems to be waning and waning and waning, which is why you see Eisner's going to, you know, Daniel Warren, you know, for Transformers, Johnson for Transformers, you know, and he's not a very typical comic artist. I mean, his stuff has a very underground look to it, and it's very expensive artwork. The opt-in, the buy-in option for Daniel Warren Johnson went away years ago, but his comics are doing very, very well, and it seems like maybe the superhero era is going to turn a corner. Maybe you know, horror comics are doing very well. If it's Transformers, if it's other IP being done in a certain way, or is it going to take going to digest in order for things to change again? But you can buy affordable artwork from a lot of different people, you know, stuff that's fresh off the newsstand, stuff that's really good. So like inexpensive is a necessity to having people get into the hobby and buy things. And I mean, there's, you know, you can buy sketches at shows, and I think that the prices on commissions and original artwork have been going up. So sketches aren't what they used to be. You know, like sketches are really fast drawings, and I think they cost more than they probably should a lot of the time. So that if you're going to spend $50-$60 on a quick sketch from someone who's not a marquee name, why not buy a published page for $50 or $60?
Well said. Yep, that's very, very, very true.
I would love Westerns to make a comeback. I would love romance comics to make a comeback. Yeah. I would love Westerns, I think, could do it. I could see Westerns making a comeback. I could see war comics making a comeback too.
I don't particularly agree. I agree with I wish they would, you know. Yeah. I just don't see the market. Like, listen, the market's not even very strong, as we've talked many times on this channel, just for comics in general. And that's with a market that loves superheroes over and above every other genre, right?
Although none of the top 20 best-selling sequential art publications are superhero comics. They're manga.
Oh, no, that's no. I knew you were going to say that. That's a whole other. I don't look at it that way, and most people don't look at it that way. There's the American comic book market, and then there's manga, two completely distinct things, because most people who read one don't read the other. So
I don't know if you can say most. I would say, well, clearly most. Well, clearly most. Wait. Let me get the sentence out. Then you can dispute it.
Okay.
Most people who are reading manga certainly not reading comics, but I think a lot of people who read comics read manga. I
will agree that there's more in that direction. There's certainly more who read comics who read some manga, you know.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with, you know, the vast majority who and I've always been manga readers.
Yeah.
Just kind of stick to that, you know.
But they're not interested in superheroes, probably, right? But that makes our point. So that opens up a whole opportunity for people who might like Westerns or romance or war comics. But here's how it would have to happen, Ruben. And remember, when Walking Dead #1 hit the stands, who the hell was buying horror comics?
Yeah.
Nobody was buying horror comics. That comic reframed what a horror comic was. You could do the same thing with a Western. You could do the same thing with a war comic. It can't just be guys in uniform shooting at each other. It has to tell a very human story, and it has to tell a very human story through the backdrop of war. And then you can have a very, very big comic. I mean, you had, you know, the Pride of Baghdad, which was a war comic told through the eyes of Pride of Lions. So, I mean, that was a very successful comic. It was an Eisner Award winner. I think it won a Harvey as well. So, I mean, these things do happen on occasion. I just think that we have to understand that someone needs to think in a way that we don't think to make that happen, you know, like, and that's their genius, you know, that's what would be so exciting. That's what would be amazing. If like Funny Animal comics came back, I would love that too. And you could say that to an extent they have in that other format.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you know, I recently rewatched for a few dollars more, and because I wanted to watch it with Arwen, you know.
I love that. I like that better than both Fistful of Dollars.
Really? That's your favorite?
Good, Bad, and the Ugly. Yeah, I think that's the best movie.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to get into that discussion, but yeah, and I just, you know, looking at it and watching it again, you know, it always makes me think, yeah, comics. I wish I could read more like a good Western comic or whatever, and whatever, man. It's, you know, I've always enjoyed the genre, but I don't believe it's ever going to come back. It's just, I don't know, for whatever reason, people just haven't cared. Which is ironic, given that for, I don't know, 3 or 4 consecutive decades, it was the most popular genre, like on television. Yeah, insane, you know?
That may have been what hurt the comics, right? Is that if you have them in other media, why do you need it in comics? Which is why superhero comics were so big for so long, because you couldn't do that in films because the special effects weren't there. Now that they are, why are people still reading superhero comics? You know, that could be from the public zeitgeist, the general public zeitgeist, maybe what's happening.
Right. And Carl, I just want to say to your comment of Scotty Young just wrapped up a really fantastic supernatural Western, a dying gunslinger on a path to dual death. So here's the thing that I have to say about that, Carl. I'm not saying it wasn't great. You loved it. I'm glad you loved it. But I personally, as a reader, I really dislike genre mixing like that. So I'm not I would never want to read that. If I wanted Western, I want it to be Western. I don't want supernatural. You want to have a supernatural comic over here? Sure, that'll be cool. Maybe I'll try that. Western, I'll try that. Don't mix the genres. I'm not interested. I want a proper Western. That's how I see it, you know? So there you go. And by the way, you know, I've mentioned it before. I like film noir and stuff. So when Ed Brubaker stopped Captain America and he started really breaking out into writing all those different indie things, right? And he came out with at least 1, if not 2, what I thought was going to be noirish type thing with the femme fatale, whatever. And I start reading it. I'm all excited.
And it's
all
dead superheroes.
It wasn't a superhero. I turned the page and it's like Cthulhu. Cthulhu was there or something. I was like, what? What is happening? No, you know, how could you do this to me? No, I just, and it went downhill from there. And so, yeah, it's not for me. It's like, keep it one or the other. Not interested. You can't say that you're putting out a Western if you're putting it out mixed with supernatural. Like, it's not a Western. It's Western / supernatural, you know, whatever. But okay, let us get on with it. I do like Corona's work, though, Carl, so that's kind of interesting, but I don't want to read it. Have Zero in just a manga. Let me this quickly. And war comics I like. Me too. I could buy stacks for nothing. You can? Wow. You
not mint condition. Not mint. I mean, you can't find any of that stuff in 9.6 or above. I mean, like war comics, Western comics, those were really read and torn to pieces. Like, except, you know, there's that handful of stuff that Joe R. Lansdale was doing with Vertigo, with Tim Truman, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, when you see war comics hit the block in 9.8, which you never see, they go for crazy money.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I love Jonah Hex. Jonah Hex was fantastic.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the Kavi is yeah. I love Jonah Hex.
That relaunch of Jonah Hex as Hex was the first time I ever remember seeing Mark Teixeira's name in a comic book as an illustrator.
Whose name? Sorry,
Mark Teixeira.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Well, Steve agrees with me. Let Westerns be Westerns, you know. And so Carl would love it too. Yeah. All right. 10 minutes on Westerns. Yeah, you know the show. You know what's going to happen. What about Galaxy Rangers? I've never heard of it, Tom. I don't know what Galaxy Rangers is, to be honest. The good, the bad, and the Cthulhu. Exactly. Love Cowboys and Aliens. Yeah, no, I would never watch that. The Brave Star. The Brave Star hater? I don't even know what Brave Star is. I don't know. Good, bad, and Cthulhu, honestly. You would, Dave? I wouldn't. What's up, Lee? Good to see you, Lee. Digging the Western convo. You see, look at that, Kavi. For some of us who get tired of the constant talk in between showing the art, some of us love the continued chatting. What can I say?
When you see all those European comics that maintain the Western, like there's a lot of bande dessinée and fumetti that kept producing Western genre stuff and Viking genre stuff and like not even sword and sorcery, but just like medieval drama stuff.
Yeah.
That stuff continues to sell in Europe, and where I think they have a different sensibility of stuff.
Yeah, it's a completely different market. You know that, right? So that's exactly. Okay, let us get on to the next piece. As Kavi says, I know the show, but I also have to sleep early tonight. I want to see the pics. Selfish of me. I know. No, it's not selfish. I know. I get it. All right. Let us check the next piece, everybody. And for that, we do get away from mainstream and go a little to, I think, horror. Let's check this one out.
Yeah. Now, I've been trying to find that comic, to be honest. I can't find that comic.
Oh, really?
I like Jenny Frisen's artwork. I like her work in horror best. She's sort of like the hot cover artist of the moment. You know, after Peach Momoko, it seems like there's a huge dedicated following to Jenny Frisen stuff. This really reminds me of the Twisted Tales cover that Bernie Wrightson did for #2 of like the guy chasing the kids with an axe with a rope with a bunch of heads on it. One of my all-time favorite comic book covers.
Yeah,
and
that's a big-time classic Wrightson, yeah.
Yeah, and so the way that she works is she does those pencils first, which you can see right there, and then she bounces those pencils down to a tone board and goes at it with white graphite as well to give even more texture to it before handing it off for coloring. I don't love the coloring that they did on this cover at all. I think it really, in a way, is a disservice to the pencils itself. But yeah, I just really loved it. I picked up a couple of Jenny Frisen pieces at the same time. I sold the other one, which was funny. It had
But sorry, Matt, did you say or did you mention? I would assume the coloring she does digitally, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But she does like a tone board piece as well before it goes off to coloring. So there's a two.
Oh, there's another one.
Yeah.
On top of the pencils. Oh.
Yep. And I always keep that stuff together. I don't separate that stuff out. I did end up getting a prelim for the back cover of her Alice in Wonderland book, and on the flip side of it was the pencils to a Loki assassin of or agent of Asgard #1 cover. So it was like a back cover of one piece, and then the other side of the same board was the cover to a different piece. It was super weird, but I love her horror stuff. It'd be nice if she could land a gig doing her own thing, but I just think she makes too much money as a cover artist to care about doing interiors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do want to say, I don't have to, but I will say it only because Carl also kind of mentions it, that the colors have a bit of a cheap old 3D glasses image effect, unfortunately. I don't see that. I wouldn't have described it that way.
I just think it's muddy.
Okay, I don't think she's a very good digital colorist. I guess that's, I don't know. I haven't seen enough of her colors to really compare. Maybe she was trying something different.
And I'm not sure if she actually did the color for that. She might.
Oh, that's true. Maybe it was another colorist. That's possible, right?
Having seen like the tone board, I can't imagine that she colored this because it kills the tone board work that she did.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, it's funny. You're getting a lot of comments back and forth. It seems very 50-50. A lot of people saying, I love the horror. Oh, hate horror. And yeah, it's funny. Ooh, that's what I mean. Those images were fuzzy, muddy. That's what he's trying to say, Carl.
Yeah.
Hart thinks they're putrid. And pencils are really nice. Yeah, I like that. The pencils are very soft, delicate and soft, I find.
But then you see like the texture of the hair and then like the hands. So it's and the amount of detail on that face that's floating between the legs. And that is simple in the way that Frank Quitely's pencils are simple, but there's also enough detail on it that is completely lost in that color piece. Like it's just completely gone. And I mean, that's another thing that, when you collect original comic art, you get to see the stuff before, the colors are on top of it. And you can, a lot of stuff is rescued. Obviously IDW have made like a company saving pivot into those giant, artist editions, which don't have the color on it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of opinions in the chat by our friends on the colors, so that's very interesting. Yep. I'm glad you guys are speaking out about it. We have often talked a lot about how how much a lot of us hate the coloring of most comics, you know, compared to certainly compared to the, you know, original art. So it's nice that there's a lot of opinions on it. It's cool. Okay, excellent. But yeah, cool piece. Yeah, I like horror, so for me that was fun to see and pick, you know. Glad I could pick that one. Yeah, let's jump to the next piece, everybody. And for that, we go back to another commission. Check this one out.
Jorge Fornés. So now, and this is funny too. So this I did not commission.
Okay.
This was, I think, just one of a set of drawings that he was selling as part of a, I think it was done for the Lake Como festival, where he had like drawings that were available, and if you signed up, you could get it. And then whoever bought it sold it at Heritage and lost their ass on it. Like, this was seriously, I think this was like $200.
Wow.
And I could not have gotten this for less than 800, I think, you know, from Fornés. I know his rep, you know, he was, at least for a while, handled by one of the Barcelona companies. I think he still is. And I love his version of Batman. There's something that's kind of like a little bit Dave Mazzucchelli and a little bit of just something nastier. Like there's a certain nastiness to his Batman. It's like very sinister looking. And I really, really dug it, even though that, you know, the utility belt looks like, you know, Adam West. But there's just something like really, like if you were a criminal and you saw that guy in an alley, you'd be scared for more reasons than just the fact that he's a vigilante. I mean, this dude looks like something you'd uncover at an S&M club. It's just really, really, you know, like sinister.
Yeah, I think it's very, very, very cool. It's simple. It's a simple piece, no doubt. But I don't know. It drew me in. I like the composition of it all. It's simplistic, but it's just, I don't know. It says everything it has to say.
I like where he left a lot of the top just unfussed with.
Yeah,
like that the composition leaves a lot on the top, and it all for the betterment of the piece.
Yeah, that's kind of a lot what it had to do with for me as well. That's kind of what I'm getting at, you know. Yeah, simple, but yeah, man, very, very nice. So Dave says, I also really like Jorge Fornés' style. Hart thinks that it has a harsh Jock style. Interesting.
I get why he's saying that. I think Jock has a lot more individual lines.
Yeah.
And this has a lot of blocked out black.
Yeah, you know, it's funny that you say that, Hart, because I actually would say that Jock's work would look like a more harsh style of this piece that Fornés has done, you know. So yeah, but I don't know. Interesting to me, anyways. I like it, and he's quite popular now with the fans as well, right? So
his Rorschach comic's actually really good too. I think Tom King wrote that. One of the few comics that survived the Before Watchmen relaunch of Watchmen, where they brought him back as kind of a regular continuity character, more like the Question character that he was sort of built around. And it's his artwork, and that's really fantastic, and it's a good comic. It's just a very well written comic.
Good to hear. Good to hear there are still some good comics out there, you know. 9.5 Maz-T. Why? What the hell, Rick? You're way too slick for us now, Slick Rick. I'm sure you'll explain it to us, though. All right, but in the meantime, let's hit the next piece. And shock of all shocks, everyone, we're going to be actually hitting something. Oh, I was never a Wasp fan, so that's why I would never have gotten that. I was never ever a Wasp fan.
Love Machine reference?
I couldn't name you a single Wasp song. Yeah. So sorry, but thanks for clearing it up quickly, though. Not the friendliest dude, though, says Maki. Who? Fornés?
Fornés.
Wow, you've got a story about Fornés not being a friendly guy. Interesting. I haven't heard anything about it, so I'm sorry.
Could be a language barrier thing.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe he'll fill us in. But in the meantime, let us move on. And it says Maki, okay. We're going back to something, as I said, very shocking for Matt, for a lot of you. But back to something modern and mainstream. So check it out.
Yeah, this is really unlike everything else in my collection, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I love Javier Garrón's stuff. I think, and Ian, I think, is in the chat, and he can correct me if I'm wrong. I think he did some Guardians of the Galaxy stuff. If not in Guardians of the Galaxy, with those characters in the Avengers or something. But I was a really big fan of the Jason Aaron Thor, and then the story that, spoiler alert, if you're familiar with the last Thor movie, you know that Jane becomes Thor and Jane gets cancer and Jane dies. This was sort of like her like the swan song on her death story, where she meets Valkyrie and is, you know, basically going to, you know, go to Valhalla. And right. I like the idea of these two different, very heroic women, both associated with Thor. None of them, you know, the Thor Odin's son, but people who are worthy. And it being an Avengers cover, you know, and featuring these characters is a little unusual. It was not expensive. And Garrón, who's also someone who does a blend of digital and analog. This is almost entirely analog. The background I had thought was possibly printed out, and when I looked at it, I realized that it's actually wash. So you know,
nice. Good.
It's not even a blue line. It's just a really, really good piece. I also saw this I think before the cover came out, before it was released as a solicitation, and I reached out to the reps and I said, "Hey, are you going to have this cover? Because if you're going to have this, I want it." And so I had to wait until they were clear to be able to sell it, and bought it with a few other pieces. But yeah, it's just I don't own a lot of mainstream Marvel stuff, and this to me is a little bit more almost in the Vertigo sphere, because it's so Norwegian, you know, Pantheon of Gods type of stuff, the type of thing that Neil Gaiman would write and has written.
Right.
But who wrote this? This was, this is also Jason Aaron's run on Avengers. So one of the better mainstream comics of the last, you know, 10, 15 years.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah, I agree with, excuse me, CJ. Not a big fan of those colors, but again, when am I ever a fan of the colors? Not very often. But that background, that scary face in the background that you thought might have been printed or whatever, in person, is it more legible than what it shows here on screen?
Less. It's like I had to contrast that so you could even see it.
Really?
Like it's real subtle. Like really, 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 really light. And I think because he knew it was going to be a different color.
Okay.
Like knowing that because you're going from a dark color to a light color, that's a lot easier to do if you can keep it very, very opaque. But it was also kind of nice to see. I love these Spanish artists. They're like, I think Spain and Brazil and the Philippines are killing it with the amount of talent that they're releasing. And I would say that in the Philippines, as far as published comic artists, because a lot of the people that we know are people that are doing commissions that don't have a lot of published work, and they're great at what they do, stylized, but they need, I mean, to the extent that they need anything, right? Because we're talking about a dying medium. But if they wanted to work for Marvel, they would need somebody like a George Perez or like a Joe Orlando, who could be like, let's tighten this part up. Let's take a little bit of the manga influence out of this and make it a little bit more into something a bit more realistic. A lot of the Filipino artists work on this kind of precipice of stylized and real that isn't quite stylized enough unless you're Mannix, or isn't realistic enough unless you're what's his name, Harvey. So like there's a lot of sort of a little too much of one and not enough of the other. But Spanish artists, especially the guys out of Barcelona, are killing it. And obviously you've got, you know, Chiaroscuro Studios in Brazil and all these other, you know, Brazilian studios of people that are just for the absolute master illustrators of the human form.
yeah, I would say that for the last generation, I mean, a full generation has passed. If you think about it, the industry has been, I mean, artistically speaking, of course, has been just overrun and just dominated by Spaniards and especially by Brazilians. You know, it's wow, so much talent coming out of those two countries, you know?
I mean, it makes a lot more sense in Brazil than it does in Spain, because we know what these guys get paid.
Right.
You know, and I mean, Spain's in Europe, so it's not like a super cheap country. It's not England, and it's not France, and it's not Germany, so it's a little bit cheaper to live. But they're getting paid probably. Oh, I guess they're probably getting paid in dollars. So that may help. But you'd actually rather get paid in euros. Whereas in Brazil, you can produce a comic. You know, that whole thing we've heard about from IDW of like they want to produce a comic for $200 all in, meaning the writing, the pencils, the inking. The lettering, the coloring, they want it all done for $200, which leaves nothing for anybody.
That's
you
dirt.
Can do that. You can do that in Brazil, and you can do that in the Philippines, and that's a healthy wage in those two countries.
Yeah, I know. Which is I don't even want to get into that because it's
we'll leave that to the World Economic Forum.
Exactly. But it's fascinating. So I've had those talks privately with friends, right? And it's we all have probably so. Whatever, but it's not the place or time for it. But excellent. It's a nice Marvel cover for you, man, and something else to keep proving to people that you're not just that guy who collects weird stuff.
One of very few published Marvel covers. Yes, one of a couple published Marvel covers in my collection.
Yeah, exactly. And thank you, since Nick's not here. Thank you, Tom, for reminding everybody to hit the thumbs up. I would appreciate that, yes, and leave a comment if you can afterwards. If you don't mind, those of you, especially on Rewind, like 99.9% of you do not bother. So I'm counting on the 0.1% of you who are listening and care enough. And for most of you who watch live but forget, please, somewhere here, you see the thumbs up icon. Please just click that. Don't subscribe if you're not subscribed. That's okay. Just hit the thumbs up. Okay. It's just you're saying you like it, whatever. I'd appreciate it. Thank you. And thanks again, Tom. Okay. So from there, the Marvel cover takes us to another cover, but we leave the mainstream and go to this one.
Yeah. So I'm a huge Veronica Fish fan. And Andy as well. And this is a true collaboration with this cover. I know Andy did the lettering. I think he did the inking.
I think he did not do the inking. I don't think he did. I think you in your listing in your gallery, I think have it that way. You insinuate it, but I kind of try to do some research, and my feeling is that it's just her, because I think first of all, I think if he inked it, why wouldn't he have signed his name along with his wife? That's the first thing.
He doesn't always, though, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I mean, he is credited on the book. I should actually ask him about it. Speaking,
but if you look at the way the credits are done on the inside, if you look carefully, it appears that he, I believe, either inked the interiors or colored the interiors.
He definitely colored.
Yeah. So that's it. But anyways,
maybe this is a strict Veronica piece. And I mean, I've been buying stuff from them for years, and I dig them as just people in the hobby. And I bought a lot of just drawings from her. Like the Batgirl that I own from her is used as her example of commissions, so it's a piece that she clearly cares about. What I loved about this is Dark Horse in this era put out some really interesting creator-owned stuff. And this was written by Evan Dorkin, most known for Milk and Cheese. It's great young adult fiction. This is certainly like for the Harry Potter audience, and so drafting, the most regarded artist on Sabrina to pencil it is, like peanut butter and jelly. I mean, it's just like two things that go together really, really well. To me, though, the whole sell point on this, and I would never have bought this except that I always buy stuff from them. And I'd seen that this was going to be up for sale. I'd already booked a commission. I'd picked up a couple of drawings, and I kind of like closed my laptop and I walked away. And I came right back in. I'm like, I think I'm gonna need to grab that. That two-headed zombie monkey at the bottom.
Yeah.
Is just the greatest idea for a character ever. I love it. And it really brings the whole supernatural nature, together. And it is very much like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer type thing, but with original characters. And like I say, a really just great young adult book. Cool. I love that it's Blackwood, which I think is a great title. I love the gargoyle at the top. It's framed in that beautiful kind of almost Art Nouveau-ish kind of way.
Yeah, Dan's comment is good too. That the V design splits the image to get attention as well, and it helps the kind of points down at the two-headed monkey.
Yeah, and in those two windows that you're left at the bottom of the V, it gives you two different locations, which you would not have otherwise. That kind of help fill you in on what exactly this book is. So you can see the school that they go to, the supernatural university that they attend, and then on the other side you can see something mysterious. So you really know what you're getting. It's just a really good combination of things. I like the foliage on it a lot, and I mean honestly, Andy could have done the foliage, but I guess I'll have to ask. I'll ask. We'll do an update later.
Yeah. But it's very nice. It's a nice. I never heard of it. I don't pay too close attention to the modern day, certainly independence, whatever. But when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's interesting, and especially because I know that a lot of the guys, especially even here tonight, like Kavi and a few others, I know that they're fans of the Fishes,
Yeah.
And so when I saw that, I was like, oh man, that's kind of catching my eye even more than some of the really cool commissions that I've seen them do for some of my friends, so I was like, oh man, that's a pretty neat thing. So, and it kind of looked, horror-ish, obviously, so that caught my attention too. And so that was fun. I was like, okay, I got to pick that one for sure.
It could be a paperback cover.
It could.
That's what's kind of great about it. It could be a movie poster. It could be a paperback cover. It was also used as an omnibus cover. So, I mean, they're nice people. And so whenever I can throw some money at them, if they let me, I try to. At some point, if I were to ever get serious about wanting to do comics, I would love to at a point work with Veronica and Andy. Just cool people.
Tom, obviously, I don't have to tell you, but I tell you anyways. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Tom is asking, ballpark.
Oh, the price on that?
Yeah. Well, what would it cost to get something like that from them?
I may know exactly. Let me see if I have the document. I usually keep pretty good records with this stuff. So let me see if I can give the exact figure. I've picked up a couple of covers, and they have ranged from $650 to I think $1,200.
Okay, that's a wide range,
Yeah, depending upon what it is. One was like Lumberjanes meets Gotham Academy.
Okay.
I think I have that one for sale right now, but let me see if I can find.
I mean, it's okay. Don't look for it. He just wants a ballpark, anyways. But you figure it falls in that range you just mentioned.
I probably $900 or $1,000.
Okay, there you go. And Maki Poo Poo, he's familiar with the Fishes, and he says that sounds about right.
Yeah.
So
I don't have it in my index. That's so funny. I'll have to dig it out.
Don't worry about it, man. Don't worry about it. He says, okay, great prices. Yeah. He just wants to have an idea. That's all.
It was $865.
There you go. You found it. $865.
Yep.
And it was probably $850 plus $15 for shipping.
Yes.
Yeah. There you go. All right, cool. All right, let's keep it rolling, everyone. From there, I got a piece with two slides. So take a look at the first one.
Ooh.
And by the way, I want you to talk about, because I guess if you didn't, I would, but if you want to talk about it, since it's your art, I want to make a point of just how much Stefano Gaudiano adds to the art, that he's not just an inker. And this should tell you everything you need to know about that, right? You shouldn't have to. It shouldn't, it should be self-explanatory. But yeah, maybe talk a little bit about that as well. But yeah,
I am as guilty of this as anybody has ever been, in that I did not realize until very recently that Stefano was the inker, and that it wasn't Michael. And looking at this now, I mean, Lark's layouts are really light. Like it's really, really lightweight layout work. And the inks are so much better than the layout pieces, but they are blue line. But now if you're able to at home make your screen bigger, you can see the blue line under the bricks. So it's not a blue line, it's blue pencil. So Stefano goes in and does blue pencils on top of the blue line that he gets from Michael Lark before he inks it all in one fell swoop. So which is very interesting.
Yeah.
But look at all those bricks. I mean, we're all fans of bricks, right? But what makes this page so important is this is the final page of the Ed Brubaker Daredevil run.
That's right. Yeah, right. Let's take a look at this.
That's with all those signatures, in the overlay of thanks and goodnight, guys. That's where Matt Murdock becomes the leader of the Hand. And I think that run is the best ever run on Daredevil.
Oh, wow. I've heard a lot of people say great things about it. I've heard people from our generation who grew up with the Miller Daredevil and for decades thought that's the best ever, best stuff from Daredevil. And I've heard some of them then say, oh my God, you wouldn't believe it. That series with, that started with Bendis and then got taken over, that whole run, oh my God. And
I'd have agreed. That was my exact opinion. And someone said, have you read Bendis's run on Daredevil? And I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, it's like the greatest run on Daredevil ever. And I'm like, bullshit. I'm like, Frank Miller and at least Miller Mazzucchelli, which I prefer to the original Miller run. And they're like, no, man, this is a whole different type of thing. Now, if I had read either of those as a monthly comic, I probably would have given up 4 months in. Because it's very soap opera-esque. I would say that the Bendis run is like The Godfather Part 2, and the Brubaker run is like all 5 seasons of The Sopranos. That the way that it tells its story, it does it deliberately. It really takes its time. I prefer Lark's pencils to the work that was done on the Bendis run, which I think is... a fantastic artist, but what Gaudiano brought to this book, as you can see in these 2 examples, and again, I am not a fan of separating these things. I hate when people would buy, this was all Mark Hay repped both of them, so you would get both as part of the same set, and people would break it up and sell the pencils off or something. And
I gotta let me say this though, Matt. Let me say this. If I was looking for a page like this, and if they're being offered separately, like they usually are, I would have bought the ink piece, the finished piece.
Of course.
I would not care about the penciled piece. I don't need that. I would just take the finished piece, and I'd be super happy with that. That would be my thing,
And that would be a Michael Lark blue line.
It would be what?
It'd be a blue line of Michael Lark's pencil, so you wouldn't own a Michael Lark piece because it would be just the Gaudiano inks.
But I don't look at it that way. The pencils would be buried forever. I couldn't see them under the ink anyways. Yeah. So and the style, right? You're still looking at Michael Lark's work. It's identical to his pencils. So it's just the original graphite that you don't have, right? But like I said, under the ink, it's still not really, you still don't really have it. It's there, but it's not there because you can't uncover it. You know what I mean? So
well, you have them as one piece, but I will say this, and this is a really good piece that's a good hill to die on, Ruben, because that you look at the difference in those 2 pieces of paper. and one is clearly better than the other, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but what about Mark Bagley and the blue line of his Spider-Man pages that got inked, and people forget to say that that's what you're getting.
Oh.
That Bagley's pencils are on a completely different page for almost the entire Ultimate Spider-Man run. There are apparently a couple issues here and there where they're on the same page.
No. You're talking about Ultimate Spider-Man interiors?
Yeah. From like a certain point onward, it's separate pages.
Not that I know of. Everything I've ever seen all throughout the run has been pencils and inks on one board. I don't know what you're talking about. I've owned
them. I've owned the inkers pages.
What?
Yeah.
From who?
Who's his inker? It was like his inker for.
He had various.
He had like 3 or 4 different people, but like, who's the guy that? The worst rep, the Critics' Choice guy or whatever, Collector's Choice guy.
Spencer.
Yes. So someone that he reps, and he had done a bunch, like more than 20 issues.
Okay, I don't know. I've never heard of such a thing. Like I said, early on in the middle of let's say the first 100, early on, I remember being all on one board. In the middle, Scott Hanna, same thing.
Yeah, the page I had a beautiful DPS.
Maybe he did a run that for a certain while was just he was doing it on his own board.
I thought all the Hannas were like that.
No.
But apparently no. Apparently there are some that aren't, but I've seen dozens.
Thanks, Kavi.
Different issues that are Scott Hanna inks on Blue Line.
Okay. Anyway, let's not get into a Blue Line discussion like Stanley wants us to.
But I mean, there's pros and cons. I think they should be kept together. It's weird to me that they're not. It's also weird to me that people separate dogas from cells.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other thing. But I will say, I agree with you if they were offered together. In other words, if the seller sold them together, I do agree that, like, at that point, okay, they're together. Don't separate them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need both personally, but if you forced me to have to buy both in order to get the one I wanted, then I'm not going to then say, oh, let me like cut my cost in half or whatever, and keep the one I want and dump. No, I would keep them together.
Yeah, it upsets me because it creates problems in the hobby, and then maybe someone hires somebody to ink the pencil page. So now you have an inked pencil page, and then you have the inked Blue Line page, which is the actual published page.
The published inked page plus this
hybrid,
now unpublished inked page. Like, it's so bizarre. Like, people have done that to the Ultimate Spider-Man covers on a few occasions.
Yeah.
And that's like, what are you thinking? It's already been published, you moron. It's like, oh my God. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Don't even want to touch that. Don't want to. Yeah.
But it's a great kind of branch of that conversation, and that's the perfect page to discuss it about. Like, and I've got a few of them. Like, I loved that run. I love that issue. That particular issue 500 has everything in it. It's got Lady Bullseye. It's got Old Teacher. It's got the Kingpin. It's got
by the way,
Matt Murdock.
By the way, Tom was asking, what run is that? In other words, like, roughly that story with Matt becoming the leader of the Hand. What issues would that have been roughly?
There's 2 omnibuy that are the Ed Brubaker story, and that's the culmination. That's what it ends with.
Okay, but read the whole Brubaker run then, Tom. That's the best thing. That's everybody tells me to do anyways. Everybody tells me, look, you might as well read the whole series. Start with the Bendis because it was really good too. And then keep going all the way through the entire series. They say it's like amazing. Even for those of you,
run builds out Kingpin's family and the dynamic of what it's like to be a mob boss in a weird way. And that's where Daredevil's identity becomes public, and that causes him problems. So, like, the thing that Kingpin threatened to do in the Miller Mazzucchelli run actually happens in the Bendis run years later, which causes all sorts of problems. And then Brubaker knew he was going to be taking over, so they had a chance. He had a chance to talk with Bendis, and for Bendis to end and him to know where he was going to start from, so it could be seamless and it could happen within a month's time. Right. And that whole story then about like the prison breaks and stuff, it's insanity. It's like it's such.
Don't say too much, because I do want to eventually. I don't know where I'll get the time, but
yeah,
the series went to how many total? Like if you start with both of the guys' runs, Bendis and Brubaker, that's how many issues all told? Like 100.
Most omnibuy are what, like 24 comics per omnibus?
24 to 30, somewhere in there. Yeah,
I think it's like 38 to 40 issues plus a couple of specials for Bendis, and similar with Brubaker. Issue 500 is like comes out of nowhere. Like it's all of a sudden issue 500. Why? I don't know.
That's stupid. We realized in the early 90s we were idiots for having canceled all those titles and restarted them instead of keeping with history and the numbering. And when it's an issue that would have been the anniversary number, like 500 or 400 or whatever. We'll put that number on. Like, so stupid. Whatever.
And there's some great Gene Colan pages in that same issue.
Oh, that's the issue with the Colan stuff.
Yeah, really wonderful stuff. And then Colan did some stuff in Brubaker's that Captain America Reborn. I think he did some work on that as well with Steve Epting, separately. Like different pages. And really cool stuff.
Yeah. All right. Go have yourself an egg cream, Peter. All right. Let us get to the next piece, everybody. And for that piece, I don't remember what it is, but let's check it out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, more horror.
This isn't just horror. This was the very first comic story that Stephen King ever wrote directly for comic books. This is the backup story in American Vampire #1. So the character of Skinner Sweet, who is the American Vampire, created by what's his name? Black Mirror, Scott Snyder. The backup story is written by Stephen King. And this is his origin. This is how he becomes a vampire. So you see the drops of blood drop into his eye as he's killing this this Nosferatu out in the Wild West. And this is also just a really great example of why Rafael Albuquerque is a friggin' genius. You don't see it that often, but like he's got these like when he's inked, he has like these really heavy inked lines. Like if you've seen his Blue Beetle run, they're like it's almost chunky. And when you see it here, you see how much graphite and how much like levity he brings to the piece. Again, I don't love the color, but I don't hate it. But it's just not as good as the black and white.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like it. I just I saw the vampire in the first in the first panel. I was like, oh yeah, he's about to friggin' take a chunk out of his face. I was like, this is for me, baby. Yeah.
Now I own two of the most important pages from this book, and so I also owned the first full view of Skinner Sweet on a page with Pearl, and that was supposed to be page #2. When they ended up publishing it, they redrew a little bit more of the beginning. And if you have the omnibus, that page is reprinted by itself at the end of the book in just the black and white version of the artwork. So it's a highly provenance piece. Okay. I got rid of that one and kept this one because to me, this is the book.
Okay. Dave says that he really enjoyed this series as well. So we have another fan here.
Yeah, really great Vertigo series, a modern Vertigo series. There have been several sequels to the original American Vampire run. They're all good. There's been rumors for years that it was going to get turned into an AMC series. It's one of the books I believe that that Evan, who is the writing partner of Seth Rogen, that he had optioned it, but I'm not sure if that's true or not.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I would imagine that in Hollywood, it's difficult to you option something and, do we make the decision to put this into a series or movie or whatever? Like with this type of genre stuff, like horror, because over the last 20 years, there's kind of been a lot of these, Walking Dead zombie stuff. Do we do another one? And then there was that Fables ripoff that turned into a couple of two different TV series, or it's kind of like I don't know, will the audience be there for another one of these kinds of
I'm amazed that Bill Willingham didn't sue the production of Once Upon a Time, because that absolutely killed any chance of a Fable series happening back then. I mean, it could still happen now because it is different enough, but they certainly cribbed a lot from Fables.
For sure. Okay, perfect, excellent, very cool page, man. All right, let's keep rolling. For that, we show. I don't remember what we have next. What is this next one? Surprise, surprise, surprise. Oh yeah.
See,
Mike Choi piece.
I loved this comic. Like, this comic was so good. The inking on this really takes all the character out of the pencil. This is the worst era of Marvel inking, I think, ever.
You mean coloring?
Yes, coloring. Yes, coloring. Yeah. And I'm not sure if Mike colored this himself or not back in the day, but this sequence of battle is the way a fight happens. Like, when you're in a fight and it's happening, because everything happens so quick.
Yeah.
And that sequence of panels down the bottom, to me, is a textbook how you illustrate a fight. Mike had arthritis in his hand, and
oh wow,
and had to have an operation, and it took him a long time to come back. He even started trying to draw with his left hand, and he wasn't bad at it. And he's kind of getting back this. It's a little bit more stripped down. It's a little bit simpler. I like it a lot. And now
Marcus says that his lady colored it.
Oh, okay, yeah, maybe
is that right?
Because I remember him saying that he was happy with the coloring.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, I don't like it at all. It's too airbrushed.
It's too computer looking. Like, I don't know. I just don't like it either.
Yeah, it's that era. It's just that era of publishing. That's just what coloring looked like. I would love to see a IDW artist edition of Target X of the whole series, because his pencils are so good, and it's just pencil, which he would contrast and then color. And
would you though, Matt? Like, honestly, see, because I disagree. Even though I like these pencils, right? I like the fact that they're these clean lines.
Yep.
But in terms of when you in the context of thinking of it as a potential artist edition, I would not want to see it because of the fact of how it's done, with the clean lines and purposely leaving it open for color, which is the reason he doesn't in his pencils demonstrate a light source, right? Because he's going to leave it up to the colorist to do that. So for me, I just to look at it in pencil form, I'm just missing, all the light source. It's just way too white for me to want to ever think that, oh yeah, I want to see this in an artist edition, unless he went in and shaded it all with pencil. But it's just drawn.
I totally see what you're saying. But I guess the way that and they would never do it anyways, because it was never a successful title enough for them to do it with. And again, I've owned a lot of pages from this series. I had the great splash of the main villain that she's fighting here, like kind of defeating her and kind of holding her by the hair. It's this beautiful splash page, which became the cover of the next issue, but the splash was nicer.
Okay.
And I let all that stuff go because I just love this page, and I feel like this is it. He's also like, she's clearly a teenager, and what I love about Mike Choi's drawing of her is he doesn't over sexualize her.
Right.
Like, she looks pissed. That middle panel is rage. Like someone that has a Wolverine, a rabid rage and not a lot of control over it. And, what do we know about most animals in nature? It's that the younger versions of them are deadlier, whether it's a snake or, whatever. And I feel like he really captured it. He's so good in using just a slightly darker or heavier hand on the pencil to articulate expression. Yeah. So in that middle, you can see one a little bit darker on the eyes and the eyebrows, and everything else is that same light color as the rest of his pencil. And it's a really interesting use, very simply, of emphasizing something.
Yeah, and Matt, I got to ask you again a similar question. Well, same question I asked you about one of the earlier pieces. Is this piece in person about as dark as this, or lighter, or darker, or
about the same. This is a pretty good representation of what it looks like. Yeah.
Okay.
He uses a very thin, soft tip pencil, I think, for the darker areas, and he uses a hard, like probably 2 or 4 for the lighter stuff. But he's also got like a bunch of the same pencils that he has sharpened to different degrees to get the line that he wants, which is, you know, that's when you know someone's serious about it, right? Like you can see their pencil collections.
Sure.
I love his stuff. I like his posts on Instagram as well. He talks about different things. He was one of the big proponents of, he's like, if you do the cover, you should do the interior, which is funny because now he gets hired to do covers. But I kind of, you know, I get where he's coming from. It's a hot take. I get where he's coming from. I think we've all bought comics because someone did the cover that didn't do the interior. But that being the case, I bet we all wish they did the interior.
I mean, for the most part, certainly us older school guys would prefer it. We've always preferred that, right? So I don't know about the younger guys, but do you get the joke? I don't know what Scantron is by Marcus. Was it a Scantron #2 pencil?
I guess it's the manufacturer of a particular type of pencil.
I don't think so. I think it's got to be a joke. It's
I'm gonna say no. It's a Ticonderoga #2.
Ticonderoga. Oh my God! There's a classic. Wow.
Boy, I've got a.
Okay.
An E.
All right.
A Stettler.
Stettler, yeah.
Stettler 100B.
I've talked about those many times on my shows.
Oh, it's great pencil.
This is what I mean by Stettler erasers, guys. I've always said, you know, we use an eraser. From high school onward, these are the ones that came in. These are the first ones I remember that would not tear your paper to shreds. It erased the best, you know, and these are still the best after all these years. So
I remember the first time I saw a white eraser, and I looked at it for like probably a full minute as I took in how much better this white eraser was than every pink eraser that I'd ever seen in my life, which was super common.
Okay, well, check it out though. Kavi's in relation to this whole Scantron #2 pencil. Kavi says SATs. It's related to SATs because then he says standardized multiple choice test pencils. And then Marcus says Matt never took his SATs. He went into a rocket.
I absolutely did. I got a 1480 on my SATs. But
nice.
The
1480?
Yeah.
Isn't 1500 the top?
1600.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. Good evening, Rich. What's up, buddy?
I made the mistake of answering every question instead of skipping the stuff I didn't know.
Oh, okay. All right, let's keep it going, everyone. And what do we got next? All right. So we had, let me see. Okay, we're going to go from X23, the beautiful, very cinematic, but I wanted to mention, I didn't say it. It looks like it was a page drawn by a director filming a movie, you know? Fantastic fight scene. Yeah, absolutely. And we go to mainstream again. Check it out.
Something about this I just love. It is like
I thought it was so weird. I was like, okay, let me show it so I can ask you what the hell's happening here.
So when I did the pop sequentialism catalog in the show, I included Jae Lee for the Fantastic Four series he had done with Grant Morrison. And there was a great page that was in it, which is the Thing looking at the head of one of the Doom bots that he's just torn off. And it looks like the Thinker. It's like this just great kind of funny tribute to the Thinker done classically. And I'm like, Jae Lee's one of these guys that he knows his artistic reference. And when you look at his older work, like whether you're talking about his Namor or you know, some of the work he did on the Before Watchmen stuff is some of the best pencils he's ever did. It's a shame that the script to the Ozymandias comic was written by Len Wein, because he was not his best writing, that's for sure. But you know, Jay's artwork on it was incredible. This is closer to what he was doing when he was doing the Dracula stuff that he was working on. So it's really kind of, you know, diffused.
Okay.
And I wanted a Hulk versus Thing page. I've always wanted a Hulk versus Thing page. I love, you know, the big change, you know, the Wrightson graphic novel that Jim Starlin wrote is one of my favorite, you know, comic stories of all time. It's just like, it's funny in all the right ways, and it's aged beautifully. And this, you've got like the Thing and the Hulk like exchanging these photographs from a previous fight, and they're going to argue over who won it. Now, clearly, you know, the Thing has won it. He's standing over the Hulk. This whole conversation follows, and it's pretty funny stuff. It's not like the best writing. It's not the greatest Hulk and Thing, you know, story.
Yeah.
But I just really like this as a title page, like, because you kind of don't know what you're looking at unless you know what it is.
Yeah, I get you. And Tom, just to answer your comment here, kind of not really a versus page. That's true, but a lot of people online, I was noticing, they refer to this as Hulk versus Thing. But if you look at the comic, it's actually not Hulk versus Thing. It's just Hulk Thing. Right? They just put one name on top of the other. That's all they wrote, right? Hulk Thing. So that's it. It's referred to as Hulk versus Thing, but the fact that they didn't put the versus means you shouldn't be expecting, you know, a knockdown, drag out battle or whatever.
But if you pop that back up,
yeah,
what did he write on it?
Yeah, no. Yes, as the title here. What I'm saying is, on the comic book covers, it was just Hulk Thing. You know, the actual logo. You know,
I wonder if you made a comic character called Hulk Thing, if you could get away with it.
It's a Hulk Thing. Probably not. I think
one word, not even hyphenated, just Hulk Thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think you'd still get a cease and desist.
Yeah. Well, I told you my story. We won't discuss it here because it's pending. But the ultimate horror story.
All right. Yes, Hulk Thing buddy cop caper for sure. Let us move on, everyone. The next piece. Now we get away from the mainstream. See, I like to go back and forth, in and out. Ooh, in and out. And we hit, well, it's kind of mainstream, but not really. You know, you'll see in a second what I mean.
Animal Style.
This is a pretty cool piece. And I know that you love this to death. So
yeah, and this is the only issue of Shade that Brendan did every page to.
Okay.
So Brendan McCarthy was the co-creator of the rebooted Shade the Changing Man and the person responsible for what became the Vertigo line, because he introduced Karen Berger to Neil Gaiman. And and so it was she was in the UK looking to, you know, I think probably talk to Alan Moore and kind of pull some more artists from 2000 AD. And Brendan McCarthy was kind of like the mouthpiece for the sophisticated post-punk art scene in the UK. The first podcast I ever did back on the old Meltdown channel was my interview with Brendan McCarthy. And this was, he had also co-written what was going to be the Mad Max reboot. Fury Road, not Fury Road, Fury Road. And, you know, his contributions to various media is incredible, but this is such a kind of Dali-esque piece. You know, there's that element of surrealism, of time being out of sync. And it's really captures the mania of the character Shade, you know, that there's an element of not just insanity, and that one of the bodies that he popped into in the earliest issues was a serial killer, and one of the second bodies was a mental patient. And so there's this idea of not knowing what identity is, but not truly understanding loss in the way that we all understand loss. And so the line is, that's what's left when you've left too soon. And just, you know, he does great hand lettering. It's as close to a surrealist art piece as you'd ever find in a comic. It's genuine pop art. It was an integral part of the Pop Sequentialism exhibition, but this was also one of those pages that I bought originally in LA, you know, when we were first buying and selling comic art. And I've kept it the entire time. It's just always been one of my favorite pages. And it's signed by both Milligan and McCarthy. And this was also published in the Milligan McCarthy book that Dark Horse put out. So it's like a quadruple provenance piece.
Very cool. Yeah, very surrealistic. It's almost Dali-esque, you know?
Yep.
In comic, Dali-esque in comic book format, if you will, you know?
I don't like the ink he used to use, like really cheap alcohol markers.
I know. I was gonna see if you were. I was like, you know what? I'm not even gonna mention that. Whatever, because let's just keep it positive. But I figured you might, you know. But yeah, look, we've talked about that a lot here, right? We hate all those people that use those things. But the thing is, you got to keep remembering, at the time, art values aside, whatever they may have been worth at the time, that's it doesn't even matter, because these guys, don't forget, they probably didn't even realize that, it's not like they were like, hey, look, they got a bunch of markers around for inking, right?
Yeah.
A bunch of different tools. It's not like they would know, that one's got the crap ink in it. And these are the good ones. Like, right? They just figured they like the tip. It's a good tip, thin, or the right thickness of it, or whatever.
Faster.
Right? Fine. Faster. Faster. Whatever. Good night, hon. And exactly. That's what it was. And then years later, after they've sold it, you know, it's fading or turning purple or whatever. Oh, okay, whatever. Like, that's, you know, how could they have known, right? So,
one of the artworks I've owned longest in my life. I've owned it for 32 years at this point.
30. Yeah, it's 32. Wow.
I'm the original owner of that published page, you know, aside from, because honestly, you know, Scott didn't own it. He was selling it for Brandon. So, you know, as a rep, he never really owned it. He was just, you know, the guy that held on to it for a while. So I'm the original owner of that piece. I'm the only person who's ever owned it. And I'll, you know, it'll bury me with it. Who knows?
Yeah, man. Original owner. Why not? Right? Like, yeah, for sure. No, that was Arwen, not Vivian, CJ. Excellent. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Very different piece. So very nice, and happy to show that one. Now we got one for Rick. I mean, me too, and you too, and a few other guys here. But yeah, let's go back to the 80s indie scene. And those of us who remember those days and really loved it, thought it was very new and fun and energetic, and so many things happening and being tried at the time. This was one of the kind of like cooler ones. Check it this one.
Oh yeah, Mage. I only picked this up like recently. I think I picked it up at one of the CAF Live events, you know, the Comic Art Live online convention.
Yeah.
And I tried to get the color page, but Matt didn't have it. But yeah, I mean, Mage, one of my all-time favorite comic books. And Sam Keith was such an important part of why that book was great. You know, when Matt and Sam stopped working together, it just didn't look like this again. And I love Matt's stuff. I loved his Demon. Obviously, I love Grendel. But there's an element of graffiti art in the kind of airbrushy type of accenting that Sam did as, you know, his inker. And then Sam was also doing a lot of the coloring, maybe. But
definitely using airbrush for the coloring, for sure.
Yeah. And it just, nothing else looked like this comic at the time. And really, I don't know if anything's ever looked like it since. And it's ostensibly a very straightforward comic. You know, it's a telling of the Fisher King story. It would be an amazing movie. There was talk a long time ago of Kevin Smith doing it, and he knew he wasn't the right guy for it, and I'm glad he passed on it. And that secures the potential for this to be a good film. It's also one of the very few comics that featured an African-American female protagonist. You know, like Edsel's a very important character. She's not on this page, which is the only bummer about this, because otherwise it has, you know, the other three most prominent characters.
Yeah. Three out of 4 ain't bad though, Matt. Come on.
And I did have Matt draw a sketch card of Edsel for me with the magic bat. But, you know, this comic was really central to bringing myth into comics. I mean, this is way before Sandman, you know, and really the stuff that Alan Moore was doing was more of a kind of, psycho magic kind of thing. Not really bringing myth in so much. So I still to this day don't think that, the first Mage comic, The Hero Discovered, gets enough credit for how different it was, for how amazing its impact on the hobby. It took forever to come out. This is 15 issues that I think took 3.5 years to come out.
Yeah.
Watchmen was coming out at the same time. The final issue of Mage and the final issue of Watchmen, which is also delayed heavily, came out within a month of each other, I believe. This is in the same era as Dark Knight Returns, of course. Terry Gilliam already did Fisher King, so I don't think he would go back and do Mage, and I don't think he's the right guy for it anymore. I mean, honestly, I think that someone like James Wan could probably do a great job with Mage if he's got the right writer. But you really need to have a believable scenario in which there's like these ogres and these magic beings that live in office buildings, in New York City, and that you can have like a raging battle and have it pull off well. I mean, who did the last Ghostbusters movies? They could do it. It's just all about, is it cast right? Is the writing matching the spirit of the comic? And I think you can have a really good success.
Yeah, like Tom was saying, it was talked about a lot in every fanzine. I think it's prozines, at the time.
Yeah,
that's
Amazing Heroes and comics like that. Yeah.
Yeah, Comics Interview, the Journal, what have you. But I would say, in my opinion, I can't see why it would ever become adapted into film or even television, simply because, not because it's not deserving, but simply because you think about how long it's been out, 40 whatever years. If it hasn't happened yet, and it hasn't ish, what you know what I mean? So obviously, because believe me, people in Hollywood have looked. It's not like they're not aware of what Mage is, right? The existence of Mage. So something about it has made them think, it's not worth.
I do think part of it is the Fisher King movie. I think the Fisher King movie, But now that movie's so long ago that I don't think it matters anymore. I mean, there have been like 3 reboots of Friday the 13th since then, or at least Texas Chainsaw Massacre since then. So I think in the right hands it could be a very successful movie, but you do need that right combination of things that we've seen other things miss. Like Hart says he doesn't like the Ghostbusters movies. I get that. My point was that, the original Ghostbusters is ostensibly supernatural things happening inside a hotel in New York City. So like, and sure, the first Ghostbusters movie is amazing, and that guy's dead. That ain't gonna happen.
If you ask me, the original Ghostbusters movie with the male leads is pretty fucking cheesy. So if you don't like the one with the females, I'm just saying, I don't know. Have you guys watched?
There's only one with the female cast. They've actually done 2 additional Ghostbusters movies.
Didn't they make a sequel with those 4 with the 4 girls?
No, they completely rebooted it. They had Paul Rudd be the son of one of the Ghostbusters, and his kids, including Finn Wolfhard and Gracie Abrams are the kids, and the kids are great. I think that those are pretty decent movies, but they didn't make a ton of money, but I mean, and I guess Hollywood's going to think, can we make money on it? I mean, that's deep in a franchise, so the law of diminishing returns is going to play a factor. Yeah, there would be excitement for an adaptation of Mage. Comicdom would be excited because the people who wrote about comics then have jobs in Hollywood now. Like they're kind of excited they would be excited about that. The fandom that writes about things would be excited about that because it's not Marvel, it's not DC. It's something that they always hoped would be done right. So if you have that magical combination of the right people and the right cast, it could be really, really good.
I guess it remains to be seen, right?
Yeah.
We'll leave it there.
It will always have potential if nobody makes it. But I mean, even the comic sequels were not great. So The Hero Defined, I did not enjoy. The 2 Mage comics that Matt did himself seemed that he had been studying Frank Miller's panel layout and artwork, and it's just the magic is gone.
Yeah,
pun intended.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, let us keep the party rolling. And now the stuff starts to get even more interesting to me. Several pieces here that I think would surprise some of you. And yeah, let's check out the next one and see what we got. This next one is for, let me see. Oh yeah, I love this next one. Yeah, check this out. This one's for Peter Rowe, baby. Peter Rowe, if you're still there. Oh my gosh.
I love Unknown Soldier. I think it's the best thing that Garth Ennis ever wrote.
Oh wow, that's high praise, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love everything Garth is. I mean, I love his Hellraiser run is pretty spectacular. I take it back. I mean, his Hellraiser run is spectacular. It's also 5 times longer than the Unknown Soldier miniseries, which is I think 4 issues. And you know, Kirby Plunkett did the interiors, but Bradstreet did the covers. They were going to do a hardcover, you know, with a flap, and this was done to be the inside flap. And instead, at the last minute, they just pumped out a trade paperback instead of doing a hardcover.
Oh, so it was never it was never published as an actual flap for a wrap for a dust jacket.
But they did make some. So like there's a handful of these extremely rare, like prototype hardcover Unknown Soldier omnibus. I mean, to say omnibus is to say a lot because it's 4 issues, but in the way that the Old Man Logan is an omnibus, I guess. But and Bradstreet's, you know, version of the character, I just loved it. It's the entire series summed up in a single panel. I had the prelim for this in the original show, and it sold. And then I saw Tim at a show in Pasadena, like not that long after, and he's like, and I gave him the catalog, and he's like, "Oh, you know, I actually have the drawing of this." I was like, "Oh, I didn't even realize this was for sale." He's like, "No, I never gave it to my rep because I just forgot that I had it." And I was like, "Well, how much do you want for it?" He's like, "Oh, just pay me what you paid, you know, for the other one." So I basically just kind of parlayed the sale of the prelim into that piece, which I knew I wasn't going to sell. And I mean, Bradstreet's kind of amazing. He's another really, I believe, underrated comic creator. Now, he's mainly known for stuff like this and like covers and his Vampire the Masquerade stuff. And kind of bringing a lightbox style into a kind of graphic and gothic medium. But I still like he just sort of disappeared for a while, you know, for a number of years where he didn't seem to be doing anything, and it's a shame. I mean, his Punisher covers were absolutely incredible.
Oh yeah, for sure. But that's why I love this, and I wanted to show it because I've seen so much. It's kind of like, you know, the old adage of a little too much of anything is too much of something is not always a good thing. You know, you kind of get bored after a while seeing the same thing. So I've seen a billion of his, you know, Punisher pieces or whatever. So to see, you know, Unknown Soldier, but still kind of in a Punisher-esque, you know, kind of look. I was like, wow, this is really, really cool, you know. So, like,
and it's illustration board. It's thick.
Okay, because I was gonna say because CJ had asked if it was Canson toned paper by any chance, and I don't know if
it ain't paper. It ain't paper. It's definitely an illustration board. Yeah,
illustration board.
Because his prelims were just like paper.
Oh, the prelims, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, shades. That's right.
So much of his Punisher design made it into that Warzone movie, like, and which I think is a really, really good movie. And you know, it's a shame that, you know, Ray's no longer with us. Who was the best part of that Ahsoka show, and now we can't even have that as a spinoff.
Oh, the Ahsoka show is dead in the water now?
Yeah, it did. They didn't say they were bringing back a second season.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. All right. So the next piece, everybody, I picked something interesting that for many, many years as a collector, I used to like shun these types of things. I used to, thumb my nose down at them. And what I mean is commission type pieces done by no-name artists. Okay. Again, that was for many years. Over the years, I've changed my stance. I've been more open to looking at other, people, whatever. And Matt has a piece in his collection that I thought was fucking sexy as fuck. Like, and it's by some no-name. I'm like, what? Like, the guy's line is so beautiful. So I just wanted to show it for that reason, just because it's beautiful by a no-name. So do you, by any chance, Matt, off the top of your head, do you know what I'm talking about?
It's going to be a Death and Dream piece, right? Or is it the Snow White Wolf piece?
It is not, and it is not. No.
Okay.
Let's show it and see what you think here. Okay. Check this one out.
Yeah, you're right. No one knows Jonatas Ferreira. And this is so outside of what I buy and collect. Like, I don't buy sexy stuff. I'm not a huge X-Men guy necessarily. This is clearly exploitation. But what's great to me about it is that he's given Rogue an athletic build, not gigantic boobs. It's an articulated foot, which is hard to do, which shows that he can draw. And the Savage Land thing, and I think the expression on her face was really the sell point in the hair. Most of his other drawings that I've seen just don't live up to this, which is a shame because you want consistency when you're buying stuff. But again, this was just a piece that was so crazy cheap. Like, if this was $60, I think that was a lot. And I mean, yeah, what do you know about Rogue? Badonkadonk. That's what you know about Rogue. But I gotta. Let me.
If I can interrupt for a second, Matt. I can't because I might forget. One of my favorite things. First of all, my favorite thing I think is just the soft, beautiful lines that he shades. Right, like on the legs, on the torso. But one of my favorite things, and I don't have a fetish, but I love her toe. The toes on her feet. She just looks like just cute little feet. Like they're really well done. At least the one foot that you can see the toes on. It is
a very well articulated foot. And again, I'm not a foot guy either, but it's like clearly he can draw because that's hard to do. And seeing that, it's sort of it's like four fetishes in one, I guess, when you really think about it. But it was such an unusual piece. I was interested in who this person was, and I started following them for a while. Most of what they draw is just really fan servicey type of stuff. This had just a much more interesting layout to me. It has the foreshortening, and it's done correctly the way it would be done in a Renaissance painting. And then you have that kind of like dinosaur in the background. It's just kind of like a great, weird little addition to it, right? But even like the plants have a nice, just a nice quality to them. Like you can tell they're plants. Like it's almost Land of the Lost, even more so than maybe the Savage Land. The Savage Land, original storylines were really explored. Obviously, there's the Khazar stuff, but like Marvel Fanfare did some great stuff with the Savage Land, in the first series of Marvel Fanfare.
Yeah.
And that was like beautifully colored Baxter paper, like really, really well colored stuff.
Yeah.
Galassi did an amazing Black Widow run in that Marvel Fanfare.
Yeah.
And this sort of reminded me of that, not the Jim Lee thing, which I don't think that, when Jim Lee was doing that Savage Land run in Uncanny X-Men, that he was really quite there yet. And maybe, and I think he was working with Portasio then, but he might have been working with Scott Williams, and it just seemed like they hadn't quite gotten to where they got by the time they relaunched their own X-Men comic,
Yeah. I also wanted to just go back for a second, if I may, just real quick, because you did mention early at the top of this segment that it's obviously in terms of the pose exploitative. Of course it is. But I still want to just focus on, again, pointing out the foot, the toes, right? I love the fact, and you mentioned this yourself, I believe, in your description. I love the fact that, I mean, if you look at it realistically, right here in this drawing, the woman is probably like a good small C cup or a really large B cup.
Yeah.
But, and you know, that's already all well and good. But I love the fact that it's not, you know, double D, triple F, whatever,
Right.
right? Like it usually is. It's so, I find that so tiring and annoying, you know? Like it's so unrealistic that in comics, every woman has to be out of this world, gigantic up top, you know? And he was so much more realistic and proportional with this. So I love that about it as well.
So number one Marvel fan says it's not even an A cup. That's just absolutely not true. You can tell from the angle, and there's like also some tear on the bottom of it. So it's not draping right. Like the top is torn, and that's giving a certain angle. Follow that line all the way over. And like you say, I think it's probably, depending upon her rib cage size, a C cup.
See, people, Matt, it's funny how when I say what I just said, and then immediately, I guess because comic fans are so used to getting what they always get, you got two guys, you got Tom and Apex Comics, both saying, nah, she's not big enough. She's got to be bigger, you know, which is funny because I guess that's what you're used to, because usually she and everyone else is a lot bigger. But that's what I don't like.
And in the comics, she's freak. I mean, she's been drawn in many different ways. If you go back to the original Rogue, before like she got the streak in her hair and stuff when she had short hair, this would be accurate. But that whole kind of like cheesecake thing that became such a 90s phenomenon, you're talking about super unrealistic boob lines even in the comics. You're talking like not double D's, but like double E's. And then like when you look how fan service people illustrate it now, there'd be like double F, like just like ridiculously, inhumanly. Like if you saw it on a porn star, it would look stupid.
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, maybe Jonatas is a flat earther. And yes, let us move on. But yeah, no, for a guy I've never heard of, fantastic. And Kavi mentions that he believes he's from the Ed Benes studio. I wouldn't be surprised, because pretty much every still as of yet unpublished, monthly comic artist that does pinups in Brazil is part of Ed Benes' studio, so, or Mike Deodato's studio. It's one or the other, Yeah. All right.
Probably right. And he's probably an inker, not a penciler.
Yeah. All right. So a handful of pieces left, everybody. Let us get this done. The next piece is near and dear to Matt's heart. Check it out.
Yep. Literally, quite literally right now. So if you know the story about the Seven Faces of Death preview piece that Chris Pacello had done and that I had purchased and got sold out from under me after I'd gotten it tattooed, that convention, as I walked around like almost in tears, I walked over to Vincent Locke's table and saw that he had this drawing of death on his table, and I immediately bought it, and then I got it tattooed the next week. And it was, to a great degree. And now Vincent Locke has inked death in the comics in Sandman.
Right.
So he's an artist, well known as an inker.
Is inking on the Jill Thompson pages, I think? Is that it?
I think he's inked Jill Thompson. I think he's also inked Chris Pacello.
Oh, okay.
I think he's also inked my gosh.
What doesn't matter.
Yeah, he worked on quite a few different individual issues in the Sandman run and then other Vertigo stuff. But Vincent Locke, of course, famous for Dead World. The original zombie comic years before Walking Dead, and was never really kind of able to monetize that, and then kind of became the artist for the band Cannibal Corpse for a while. And so this death is very closer to the original sort of design element of what death was supposed to look like, based on a girl that that Neil knew in goth clubs in London, who actually just passed away a few years ago. And she was very, very thin and tall, and sort of had like this very specific look to her. And I like the face on this is also a little bit reminiscent of the Les Miserables artwork, you know, for the original London cast when they did the Broadway posters. Like there's an element of a lot of things, and it's just all ink. It's just nice. I mean, you know, Vince is a talented guy, and this is one of my favorite characters. It's another piece that I've owned almost as long as I've owned that Shade piece. So obviously a piece that's been in my collection for over 32 years.
Yeah, it's amazing. Absolutely.
And it is tattooed on my inner arm.
On your inner arm, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Are you going to show it if I are you capable of that, or are you covered up with too much clothing?
Nah, I got too much clothing on.
All righty. Let us remove that. Excellent. And yeah, isn't that funny that Sienkiewicz, his mother and sister actually say it Sienkiewicz, just like a lot of families say it Sienkiewicz. That's how it became Americanized, if you will. The proper way is Sienkiewicz. Yeah, and but I remember in the early '80s, like when I first started, you know, collecting and reading, and I started hanging around in my local comic shop. It was also in that shop. It was always also Sienkiewicz for everybody, because nobody knew. You know, we hadn't talked. We'd never gone. You know, he had never come at that point to Montreal. You know, nobody, you know, had ever heard him speak and say the name, whatever. So everybody was like, yeah, Sienkiewicz. So that was the recognized way to say that name for many, many years. And the first time I ever heard Sienkiewicz was when I guess in some fanzine, prozine type thing, it was listed, you know, the way that I just put it in the chat, you know, phonetically to tell you how to say it, you know. So
how he has it on his own site. But the we did a signing with him at that comic shop that I worked at. And I think he was living in either Connecticut or Rhode Island. And so we wanted to have him do two different signings. So two different comic shops locally pitched in to bring him up there. So we paid for his travel, and the other place paid for his like food and lodgings.
Okay.
And he was fine with the bus ticket, so it didn't cost us much. But he rang up a crazy bar tab, like buying drinks for everybody in the room. Yeah. So the other comic shop was kind of on the hook for it. But when he called and introduced himself, it took me a minute to realize who I was talking to, and that this was the guy doing Moon Knight. So that's how long ago that was. He was doing Moon Knight.
That's fun. Wow.
Yeah.
Time flies, man. We're not young anymore, Matt. You know that.
You don't need to tell me.
Okay. 4 pieces to go, everyone. Let's hit the next one. Check this one out. Number 17 in tonight's show and tell of 20 pieces.
Yeah, Bernie Wrightson. So this was done as a chapter card for when Wrightson was doing Frankenstein. So this is a really funny part of the story that I don't think a lot of people realize, that it was never even thought that it would be what it became, like this gigantic sort of omnibus-sized illustrated thing. This was going to be an illustrated paperback. Jeff Jones had already been working on the Robert E. Howard books. They were all working out of the same studio. And so when Jones had done a couple of Robert E. Howards, Wrightson pitched the idea of doing an illustrated Frankenstein because they wouldn't have to pay for the publishing rights because they were so long expired. So really the only cost involved in publication would be paying Bernie Wrightson to do these drawings. So this was supposed to be a chapter illustration, not one of the full page things. I ended up picking it up from Anthony, I think 2 days before Bernie Wrightson died.
Oh, wow.
And I remember when I got the news, wondering if he was going to honor the sale, like if he was actually going to send it. And he did, to his great credit. I believe this was $700.
Oh, my. Wow.
Yeah. Crazy cheap.
What size is it?
It's small. It's
that's what I figured. But...
Yeah, I can turn my computer and you can actually see it on the wall.
Oh, okay. Hold on a second. Let me come here, and here we go. Oh,
So let me see.
Also,
there it is. Yeah. So top piece on that wall.
top. Oh, that's one at the right, very top.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, that's a tiny one. Yeah, maybe 6, 7 inches wide by.
I think it's a weird size. I think it's like 6.5 by 7.25 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
But that was I think the first archival Bernie Wrightson artwork I had ever owned. I had owned some pieces from his stuff that he did with Steve Niles and drawings and things like that. But like as far as like a Frankenstein piece and something like really from the 70s, and that's really what you want, right? Like you want 1970s Bernie Wrightson. I've owned 60s Bernie Wrightson. It was harder to sell, and from like a historically important comic and DC's very first sword and sorcery comic. But which I picked that up from Glenn Danzig, and I sold it when I did the big sale before I bought this house, to kind of raise money for the down payment. And that's the one that I'll keep. That's the one I'm very likely to ever unload. Because I can never buy back in.
No, yeah, that's sort of the situation many of us sort of found ourselves in, right? Yeah. So it's good. Yeah, hang on tight, baby, hang on tight.
Like I still have an idea that I could maybe get a nice Barry Windsor Smith piece. Like maybe I'm deluding myself. Maybe I'm out of my mind. But I sort of feel like I may still own a really nice Barry Windsor Smith. And what's going to be something I want isn't the stuff that's worth a fortune. Like I don't care about that Wolverine stuff. I think it's great, but I like Machine Man more than I like that Wolverine story. And I really love his later Conan stuff. So that would be a lot more interesting. But of course, the Conan stuff there are Conan collectors.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Let's keep it rolling. About 3 pieces to go.
I don't think he owns the house anymore. The one on Franklin, the one that he's talking about. I think he sold it a few years back.
I'll take your word for it. Okay. So that was piece 17. Yeah. So this is the third to last piece, everyone. I love this because I saw it and immediately I was like, okay, this is all about graphic design for me. And of course, the whole Will Eisner motif. And I was like, okay, got to show this. This is pretty fabulous. I love this. Check it out.
Yeah. Perez, another one of those, Barcelona artists.
Yeah.
And I kind of like the ballet shoe. Like this is an interesting thing that wasn't in comics that often until recently, where they started giving, Spider-Gwen and Spider-Woman like type of footwear that you would expect somebody who sticks to walls would wear, like not crazy ass high heels or whatever. Love the implementation of text within the piece. Perez was still doing traditional artwork at this point, so this is an analog piece. I like the colors as a tribute to pop art of its era, but I don't love the hues that they went with in the final piece. And really, that swoosh really stands out so much better without color kind of messing with it. And there's a few panels like that in this issue, but this splash page I thought was kind of really, really nailed it.
You know what? I definitely don't hate the colors. I don't necessarily love them either. I'm like kind of like in between, somewhere in between. But I will say that I do really like the added, I don't know what you call whatever that dotted pattern thing in the hair in the back or whatever.
Definitely a print out matrix tribute to like Roy Lichtenstein, and that type of thing. And I do love that aspect of that color work. It, someone mentioned earlier that they thought that one of the other pieces looked like a 3D coloring. I think it was on the horror cover, and I think this you could really absolutely put on a pair of 3D glasses, and things are going to pop out really interestingly.
Yeah, I really, really like this. Like, did you get this when it came out?
Yeah, the Per Perez was being repped by the same person who is repping Bruno and
Oh, yeah.
Daniel Samperi at the time. Daniel's actually gone to a different company, but so I was seeing this stuff. I was seeing, the Guardian stuff that I was buying, and I just really loved it. And I'm like, oh, this is really dynamic. And it was a good run on Spider-Woman. The next issue, it kind of tanked. Like, it wasn't that interesting anymore. But his work and his graphic layout, as you say, was just really, really top notch. This is about as close as you're going to get to, as you said, a Will Eisner kind of layout in a modern comic.
Yeah.
We all love Eisner and we all give him a lot of credit for how he influenced comics, but you don't really see too many modern artists doing the Eisner thing.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, we've certainly see it here and there. I've seen pieces, right? I mean, I've seen people post them in their galleries or whatever here and there, but rare enough that I couldn't tell you off the top of my head which ones they were, but they're there. I see them,
Right.
But you're right. It's rare enough that it's fun when you see it, especially if it's well done. That's the important thing,
Yeah.
So yeah, very cool piece. A lot of fun to see that one. Okay. Couple of pieces to go, everybody. And this next one is the second to last piece. And I chose this one because when Matt posted it in his gallery, I was just struck by it. And it's not published. And again, you guys know, I've told you many times, from day one in this hobby, I was never into getting commissions. I've gotten a few, maybe a handful. That's about it for various reasons. Just not my thing. And I never used to care about sort of even looking at them early on, but then I began to appreciate looking at them in other people's collections. I kind of collect them vicariously by looking at them in everybody else's collections.
Yeah.
Because I like to look at them, and then once I'm done looking at it, okay, I don't feel any urge to own it. And when I saw this one, I was like, wow, this is beautiful. And again, an artist I was I had only recently heard of before. So yeah, let me post that one. And you guys probably, those of you who are active on CAF probably already know it because it's not long ago that Matt posted it. But yeah, tell us a little about it anyways.
Yeah, Daxiong. So, the two things that really cross over, the two comics that got me really back into comics again after a very long absence. And I'm going to have to credit an ex-girlfriend. I'm going to have to credit my ex-girlfriend, Tina, who was very into Fables and got me super hooked on it. And we would collect, and her favorite thing in the world was Snow White. So the fact that Snow White was the hero of this comic was like a whole thing. And her collection of Snow White art is extraordinary. Like, she's got a lot of really, really great pieces, including I gave her a present one year of a Sunday, full Sunday comic Snow White when Disney was rebooting it probably in the 1980s again. Origin of the story. It's a really great piece.
Sorry. I didn't hear all that. Did you say you or she has one?
Yeah.
Oh, she has one of those Sundays where they retold the story in about 12 to 15 weeks consecutive Sunday. I have one of those.
Yeah, those are great. Those are great.
I love those. Yeah, I always wanted to get more, but more never came out again. So after I bought mine.
This was the first one. This was like the origin. And and so I became really fascinated with that run. And as I've owned a lot of really important pages from Fables over the years, and I've sold all of them. The last ones I sold to raise money to buy the house, but I had the final part of the Boy Blue storyline, which is very poignant and ends the baseball game, which you and I are big baseball fans. But this was like a great way for me to kind of tie those two great flavors together. That I'm a death collector, and the idea of either Snow White cosplaying as Death or in Death cosplaying as Snow White. And, in the Fables comic, Snow White and Big B Wolf are lovers. And so the idea of Death purposely biting the apple knowing what it's going to do is the whole joke. It's the whole fun of it. And I really like the job that Daxiong did. Mailed it terribly. I'm amazed that it showed up in one piece. There was no reinforcement. It was really just kind of stuck in like a mailer. Like, really, I'm shocked that it arrived safely. But it is a beautiful piece. It looks fantastic in person. The colors pop a lot better than you can see on the screen, and it's just a fun piece.
That's what I actually wanted to ask you. Actually, is whether how did the colors in real life compare to the scan here? But so more vibrant, you would say?
Oh yeah. And I didn't want to boost it artificially. Like, I didn't want to like pump it with hue. Saturation. I didn't want to oversaturate it. Because as is, like, a lot of the detail has kind of gone out of this. So the colors are a bit muted. I just didn't want to force it into a artificial kind of brightness, and I wanted to capture the kind of texture on the blacks. Like, there's I think he's using a blue black or a green black, and it just looks great against the blue and against the reds and against the yellows. Just a nice piece. He posted a video of him doing the actual work on his own Instagram. And he's getting actual work now, so he's becoming a published, comic cover artist, starting to book a lot of work. And I mean, that's just good. That's good news for this piece in general. Good news for anybody who's purchased commissions from him in the past. That I remember for a very, very long time, one of the chiaroscuro guys posting just like drawings from this erotic comic that he was doing for years, and like selling them on eBay, and them just like selling for almost nothing. And then all of a sudden got like Marvel work and became like a big, huge deal.
Okay.
So it's funny how that can happen.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. You never know when your train is going to roll into the station, so to speak,
Yep.
Yeah. So very, very cool. Yeah. I'm pleased as punch to show that. Oh, by the way, is that a larger piece, or what kind of size are we talking about?
Like 12 by 18. So not like super bigger than a standard comic size.
Yeah. But slightly bigger than standard. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah. No, I was thinking it might have been on the smaller side, so that's pretty awesome. Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, everybody. So we're down to the last piece, the showstopper, as some of you guys like to say it. Before everybody starts taking off after I pop it on screen and leaving to go to sleep, I just want to remind you all. I mean, I'll do this. I'll close out the show with this, but I still want to remind you. Next week is another show and tell, and it is show and tell number 57. I can't believe I've gone up to past 50. Wow. With Hart. So he's back. And he will be doing the final 25, which, as most of you know, is going to be showing the final 25 pieces of published comic book art that he has decided to hold on to in his collection, because he's in the process of trying to let go of everything else. And then at some point down the road, he will come back and we will do another show and tell for the final 25. As you guys remember, he said he's going to keep 25 commissions. And so, yeah, we'll do that down the road. So please come back next week for that. Okay.
I see that Mark Fong was asking where that Daxiong resides. I need to get a lot of pieces professionally shot for a project that I'm working on. And so I haven't opted to frame and hang it yet, because I want to get high-res scanned.
No, he's asking, where does the artist himself reside? Because it's a Mandarin name, right? So is it China?
Yeah, he's in China. He was in Canada. Okay. I don't know if he's still in Canada. And he mailed my piece from San Diego Comic-Con or something. Oh, and I'm thinking, like, where everybody has packing materials. How interesting. But yeah, so he rather than mail it from overseas where it would have cost a fortune to do so, he wanted to mail it from the US, which I was fine with. I've run into that with a few people, actually, and maybe even the next piece. I'm not sure what you picked as the last piece, but we'll see.
I think you're gonna be very surprised. I think so. I would. That's my guess. You'll tell me, but think you're going to be absolutely not expecting this. I think. So yeah, guys, this final piece. Oh yeah, you could have just had Jeff bring it to you. What about that?
I'm trying to think if it was Comic-Con or if it was New York Comic-Con.
It might have been another con. Yeah,
it might not have been Sandy. It might have been Dragon Con, actually.
Yeah, because I think you would have probably thought of that. Like,
I would have had Jeff do it. And this arrived before that. Now I did do that with a different piece.
Oh, okay. There you go. You see, Marcus? He knows what he's doing. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, so this next piece, everybody, the last and final piece for tonight's show and tell. What can I say? So this piece, I love it because more so than the quality of the art, although it's fine for what it is. It's more about the historic nature of what this is. Without giving anything away, there's a handful of you tonight who have been going at it, if you get my drift. And it's related to that. So it's not comic book art. And the fact that it not only still exists, but the fact that, Matt, you own it, you got your hands on this. I wish I could buy more art like this. It's just there's no market out there established for it because it's so rare. So that's it. That's what I want to say. And it is not Golden Age Heart. No, not at all. And well, with a 1480 SAT score, I'd hope so. He is. Yeah, so nothing else needs to be said. I guess we'll just show it. And yeah, man, give us a little background about this. Yeah, I love this. Check it out.
Oh, okay. This is not what I thought it was going to be.
Okay.
So, I mean, this is Chuck D, the MC of the band Public Enemy, one of the three forming members of the band. I gave him his very first art exhibition. He went to art school and went to, I think he went to Queens College, or no, he went to college out in Long Island, I think. And where he met Flavor Flav actually on the campus while he was the campus DJ.
Oh, wow.
And so he was doing this show, and it was all these amazing drawings. And I liken his style to like courtroom illustration. Like there's an energy to it.
Yes,
like he's depicting the moment as it's unraveling.
Yes.
And so he did these wonderful hip hop portraits of the New York scene in its infancy. And every piece that we had sold out, I was able to get 3 additional pieces that weren't in the show donated to the International Hip Hop Museum, which has broken ground in Queens. And so he was like, well, is there anything you'd like me to do? And I said, well, Chuck, if I'd love for you to draw the cover to It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. And he was like, let me see what I can do. And so he had sort of designed what he wanted the cover of the record to be back in the day. So it was really easy for him to kind of access that memory of what he would have put together to show the photographer to set it up. And that original drawing doesn't exist. I think it was actually discarded.
Wait, Matt. Wait. Okay, because now you're going to disappoint me. Because I read your description carefully because I was wondering. And everything, the way you put it, certainly indicated that this was the original. So you're saying this is not the original album concept that he did back in 86, 87, or 87, 88, like I wrote on the scan, right?
No, I don't believe that it is. No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was all hyped up. Holy crap. Like, I mean, it's still cool, but it's, that's why I said historic, because I thought, holy shit, is that the original one that he drew up to say, okay, yeah, this is what I want the album cover
like,
to look like. Let's do a photo like that. And that's what I thought it was. It's kind of misleading in there's nothing to indicate that this is something he did later in your description.
I'll have to put the year on the piece.
Yeah. I'm sorry, everybody. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I'm sorry. Anyways, it's still very cool, but it's just not as it's historic as I thought it was. So
when it was published in his book, there's a monograph, and I believe I might even have grabbed some. I might have copied and pasted what they put, some of it into my description. I'll have to check and see what I've written. But it talks about the fact that he had laid out what he wanted the cover to be, and then the record label just kind of didn't listen. Like they were going to do whatever they were going to do. You know, like this was their second record. Yo Bum Rush the Show wasn't a huge hit. You know, it wasn't a massive record. Certainly not the way that other records on Def Jam were, like Radio, you know, LL Cool J and stuff like that. So like, I think he had drawn it out rather simply and shown them, and the photographer was like, okay, we'll do that, and did one of these.
Oh.
And so he saw, you know, Chuck had this vision of doing that piece that he had first done and completing it. There's a lot of EPMD pieces were in that show. There's a lot of depictions of, you know, Kool Keith, you know, a lot of the DJs that were spinning stuff. You know, there's some Jay-Z pieces from him being around back in the day. There's a great Nas portrait, but to get, you know, Chuck D's hand-drawn version of the cover of arguably the single most important hip-hop record of all time.
Yes, listen, I want to make it clear that, of course, when I'm thinking it's what I thought it was, no matter what, of course I'm disappointed now. Of course, okay? There's no way you can't be, because you thought it was that and it's not, right? I get it, okay. However, I try to put that disappointment aside, and I still think to myself, because I knew that Chuck D was an artist in school, you know? And I still think, okay, the fact that you own an original sketch of the cover, like you said, of the most famous Public Enemy album, really, drawn, it's even though it's modern, contemporary, it's still drawn by Chuck D himself. Like, you have an original Chuck D illustration. To me, that's cooler than, say, having his pair of his sneakers or whatever that he might have given you, or, you know what I mean? Just because I'm into art or whatever. I guess sneakerheads would love the sneakers, whatever. But
I had a collection of some pretty interesting hip hop artifacts. I had, you know, the original boombox that Fab Five Freddie used to DJ with. Like, it had detachable. Yeah. It's this gigantic friggin' boombox. It was a Sharp 9000. And it had wood speakers. It was that old. It's like, you know, like kind of late 70s, early 80s design, when the materials were still very, very robust. And it weighs a lot, you know, and even without, you know, the 10 D-cell batteries that you needed to power it. But you could separate the speakers and actually DJ with it. And it had auxiliary outputs. You could plug turntables and instruments into it. And so in the 80s, when Fab Five Freddie was DJing overseas, he would bring this boombox with him and DJ with it. And that was featured in the Boomboxery show that I did. We had original boombox, you know, designs from GE and that type of stuff. But a lot of those things I either sold or had donated to the Hip Hop Museum, because I figured that was going to be the home for a lot of that stuff.
Okay. That's understandable. That's cool, you know? Yeah, I also wanted to address a couple of comments. Let me see. Yeah, is he reachable? No, right? I know that, you know, you got that piece, thankfully, because of the fact that you were putting on a show at the gallery, right? So that's how that came to be. But I guess he doesn't typically draw for sale, right? Like to sell stuff. I
get at least 10 emails a month.
Really?
For people that want to buy Chuck D
Yeah.
artwork from me, because the show's archived on the gallery website. And
Oh, yeah.
I've reached out a couple of times to see if he has anything, and he's kind of like keeping stuff to do like a bigger show where the pieces are probably going to add a zero on what I was charging for them. You know, when we did the show back in 2017 in Pasadena.
Yeah,
I think the next show is probably going to be, if not at a place like Gagosian, at a place that's like Gagosian. You know, like if not actually Gagosian Project Room.
For sure. Let me say real quick before, and I don't know if you're still gone or if you're still here, Kavi. I know you're saying good night, but before you do, I did want to address your comment. Give me a second. Where is it here? Yeah, that a music art show and tell could be cool. Not only could it be cool, it would be cool. Of course it would. Original design or not, yeah, of course. Might need a few collectors to get enough for a full show. I'm well aware of that. And yes, the reason I wanted to address this comment is specifically, Kavi, because I have, since I started my channel and started the idea of show and tell as a series, I have wanted to do and wished I could do a music themed art show. Would love to do it. The only reason I haven't is for those reasons you say. Like, you would need a lot of people. There's just not enough out there. You know, George Hodge has a bunch, but it's much more contemporary, sort of easier to get stuff, like MF Doom stuff, whatever. Some of it's cool, and of course I would like to have some of his pieces included, one or two, in a show. But for the most part, what I would really love is to get a show, you know, showing the actual album art or concept art from albums that we all know from way back, you know, like a few decades old, that kind of thing, not just recent stuff, you know.
There's only a handful of people that became famous for doing illustrated album covers. So you're talking about Derek Riggs, you're talking about Roger Dean, you're talking about you know, to a lesser extent, Michael Whalen. You know, you're talking about Boris, Frazetta. So like, once you get beyond that, really what's left? I mean, like there's a massive drop after that. You know, like, you know, Derek Riggs, of course, did not just all those Iron Maiden album covers, he did all those Megadeth album covers. Derek Riggs paintings are very expensive. I know somebody who owns one of the Iron Maiden covers. That's probably worth $250,000 at this point.
Who did you say owns that?
A friend of mine.
Friend of yours? Yeah. You mentioned that. You mentioned that in a previous show that we were on. Yeah. You mentioned the Iron Maiden cover. Yeah. With one of the famous Eddie covers.
Yeah. So during the heyday, so it's not an album cover; it's a single. But some of those single covers are better than the album covers. Like, you could say ostensibly every single on the Power Slave album is a better cover than the Power Slave album cover. So you got 2 Minutes to Midnight, Aces High. You know, like the Aces High painting would be $500,000. Like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, like I had mentioned several months back on one of my streams that I don't know, a couple of years ago, the album cover art, I mean, it's not hundreds of thousands, for Quiet Riot. If anybody remembers Quiet Riot in the early 80s, Come On, Feel the Noise. Metal Health was the album.
Was that a painted cover?
Huh?
That was a painted cover?
Yeah.
I always thought that was a photo.
Okay. Yeah. It went for $40,000. And then in the same auction, the mask, the metal sort of Dr. Doomish looking mask that he has, right, that he's wearing, also sold for around 42K or something like that. Interesting, right? Yeah.
Not a single living member of the original Quiet Riot.
Not a single living member. You mean
original
left?
Quiet Riot? Yeah, none of them are left. Rudy Sarzo is as close as it gets. He was the third bass player. And was certainly part of the classic lineup for Mental Health. But he's the only person that you could even connect back to.
Okay. What are you gonna do? Father Time is unbeaten.
Yep. Do I prefer commission or published art? Well, I've got two things to say about that, Stanley. I think that if you're looking for investment, you have to go with published art. In order for commissions to get valuable, they have to get printed somehow.
Yeah, but we know that. Yeah, but Matt, we know that. Everybody knows that. But I don't think he's asking that. He's just asking, what do you prefer?
I'm not that interested, honestly, in much more published art.
Oh, like published?
Yeah, I'm not that. There's a handful of pieces that I want. Like I'm not seeing a lot of new comic art come out that I'm like, oh, I have to have that. So I've seen all the comic art that I'm ever going to want.
Okay.
And so like, what can I afford at this point? Not much. Right. Like I've got really expensive taste. So, when I see Sandman pages popping up and going for over $100,000 for panel pages, and that type of stuff, that I'm priced out, I still think like if you want to get into the hobby, there's super affordable ways to do it. Yeah. And if you're reading comics, you're buying stuff of your era, it's smart to do that because you're going to have nostalgia for it later. And so is everybody else your age. So like, get in and buy that stuff now. We're really like in the last years of physically produced artwork because it's just so much easier to do stuff digitally and then maybe print out a blue line if you want to go through that hassle and ink it, then you have like a physical manifestation of what the page is. But like most artists that are doing comics now aren't doing physically drawn comics. And that's like, most of the manga that's being produced now that isn't Japanese is all being digitally drawn. So, like those people have the types of publishing deals that comic book artists wish they had. Like they're creators and owners. They're getting paid as creators and owners. They can sell 10,000 units of a book and make millions of dollars from that. You know, like honestly, and that when you talk about the value of IP and things like that, whereas you can work for Marvel and do Spider-Man and you can be selling a circulation of 150,000 to 200,000 comics every month. And you're only getting paid $250 to $300 a page and, $600 to $2,000 for a cover. And honestly, they're not that psyched about having the person who does the interiors do the covers. They're going to pay somebody else more to do it. And they're going to have 20 of them. So like, it's not a sustainable living. Yeah. It's working for the big two, which is why they just keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Absolutely. You're right. Couldn't say.
But I do have art that I want to art direct, so like, and
I know.
I'm not shy about that. So, there's a couple of dream commissions that are out there. There's projects that I would like to get off the ground and projects that I'm working on right now that'll be a couple years before they're done. But and those have more to do with commissions and with the relationship between someone who commissions a piece and the artist. And then there's another aspect of it, which is an artist's dream commission. Like comic artists aren't like gallery artists. Like they don't do a whole lot of, I'm just going to draw this and see if I can sell it. Like they're either drawing it because someone paid them to draw it that is a publisher, or they're drawing it because someone who was a fan paid them to draw it and wants to own it.
Yeah,
so they're not doing a lot of personal work.
That's what's known as drawing on spec, right? Yeah. Drawing and speculating that you're going to be able to sell it to somebody kind of thing, right? So
yeah. I mean, those are sketches. Like a lot of artists will have sketches that are ready to go and they know they can sell those and they're inexpensive and they'll have set up at a convention they can do it. Or they're doing like practicing because they want to maybe work on a title and they've got drawings. Or if they've worked on a character long enough, they know that they can, like if you're the Spider-Man guy, you can draw Spider-Man, people will buy it. But by and large, like detailed print-worthy stuff is not being done on spec. And so there are artists who always wish that they could work on a specific title. And if they could, what title would they want to do? That's an interesting concept to me. It's always been an interesting concept to me. But you got to fund it. That's something you'd have to fund for them.
Absolutely. All right.
To be framed.
Don't let him get you. Let's close this out, baby.
Let me answer Marcus.
Okay, hold on. Before you do, let me just quick, because I'm forgetting. I forgot earlier on. Okay, let me do the promo. Everybody, EXP, the EXP, youtube.com/the EXP. Check out Nikki B didn't come in tonight. I hope he's okay. Hopefully just getting some rest. But yeah, check out his show every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific. This is the gentleman himself you're looking for right here. And yeah, you can claim some art. It's a claim show / talk show. So check that out this week, this Friday, and every Friday. I unfortunately do not have as often. They very rarely send me the links, and I couldn't find it. So I don't have a direct link for this coming Friday's show, but check it out at youtube.com right here /the EXP. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead and answer. Stretch out the show longer. Why don't you, Matt?
Of course. So this is called Sweet Revenge, by the way. Extending the length of the show. But I would say that for Marcus's question was, I think it's gone away. Do I prefer art that tells a story or something that looks pretty? Almost everything I own, with the exception of that Janitis Rogue piece, is connected to a partnership between a specific writer and a specific artist. You know, that was the whole essence of why I wrote the pop sequentialism book, why I had that exhibition, was to do so because I feel that the collaborative process in comics is unique. That you have to have multiple people that work on this one thing that we all take for granted. And it's like movies, but you don't need a budget to do it. Like, it's really just a handful of materials and talent. And so award-winning runs tend to be, they win awards not just because they're good to look at, but because they're well written. And that's why I have less appreciation for things like Spawn and for things, you know, like, I don't know, G.I. Joe, which I don't even think was really particularly well illustrated. But like, that to me, it has to be both well written and well illustrated for me to be interested. And as far as like what I've chosen to frame, the wall behind me was an easy choice because I'm such a deep collector of Bruno Redondo. It was easy to do a Bruno Redondo wall. Mm-hmm. And so that was the biggest factor. And then I bought these frames in bulk, and I bought different mats to be able to fit certain pieces. And I figured out what the best size for a mat that could fit multiple pieces would be. And I framed a few other pieces that you kind of can't see, but I don't frame a lot of comic art. I have it in books. I have it to be able to access easily. Sometimes I want to see the backs of these pieces. You know, like a lot of comic art has stuff on the back of it.
Okay. For some reason, just as we're going to end the show, somebody new, a first timer just popped in. Revolution in the Dark. And for some reason, he must be watching he must be like way behind on the stream. Because he's talking about manga. My favorite manga comes out every other month, and I'm also reading Dick Tracy and Spider-Man. Good. Thank you for dropping in and saying hello and letting us know.
Who reads manga that also reads comics. So he's one of the rarities in that particular end of things, which is good. That's fantastic.
Exactly. Thanks, Hard. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for hanging out all night. Appreciate it. Have a good one. And how did Kevin Dubrow die? God, I forget.
Cocaine overdose.
Was it a cocaine overdose? Okay. Is Matt uber doned by what has been or what? Oh, God. Okay. Never mind. Okay, everybody. Look at Stanley trying to get it going. Does Matt think that comics would gain popularity? Art was in. Okay, see, you're just trying to.
I did.
There you go. Matt's thoughts on Kant. Good. No, you're still here, Kavi. What's up? I thought you took off. What's up, man? All right, yeah, go get some rest. Go rest that foot, that leg. Get a good rest, man. Oh, my God. Paul was here and only chimed in at the last second just to let us know that he was here. What's up, Paul? Thank you. I'm glad you liked it, man. I'm glad you liked it. Thanks for hanging out. And movie chat, anyone? No, but I probably will be doing another movie-based episode again.
That should be Patreon. You should do that as a Patreon exclusive.
Doesn't Patreon just mean that people have to pay you to do it or what?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to fucking pay me to.
Hey, if they're asking for it,
goddamn movie
requesting it, they should pay for it.
What? Oh my God. Thanks, Rick. I appreciate it, man. Thank you. Are you more Aristotle or Plato?
Plato, you can make things with it.
What are Matt's? Yeah, nice one. Matt's 10 favorite horror books.
Ooh,
does Matt like Peeny's art? He loves it. He loves it. All right, guys. Thank you very. Oh my God. We'll take Revolution just because Revolution's new.
Yes.
I don't think there should be a separation of manga and comics. Mike, how is it possible?
I agree with him. I view it all as just a different as a size format.
But hold on.
Ostensibly, it's all sequential art.
But yes, I agree with that. Don't misunderstand. I agree with that. But I absolutely think we need to separate when we bring up manga in the context of talking about the comic book business, and we're throwing out things like, the comic book business is like suffering. It's been dead in the water, barely keeping their head above water for 35 years or 30 years or whatever it's been. When we talk about stuff like that, you need to separate because, I did a show once where it was, I was going off on a tangent that way. And then Ron Lim, not the artist, the collector Ron Lim came in and he started, quoting these statistics that sort of say the opposite that I was saying.
And it includes manga, yeah.
And right, and they sounded very familiar to me, and I was like, why does it sound so familiar? And I was saying, no, you're wrong. And then I realized, it sounds so familiar because he's grabbing them from an article that I had recently read online. Yeah. And they absolutely included manga. That's the bulk of the numbers, right? It was like, of course, I'm not talking about that. We're talking, look, most of us talk about American comic books because that's what most of us are into. So that's what I'm saying, Matt. You know what I mean? Like, in that context, when we talk about the size of the hobby, whether it's healthy or not, that kind of stuff, I think we have to separate.
Western manga would be amazing. Like, done digest size. That could bring the Western back. I have full faith in that. And I also think that war stories are still relevant as graphic novels. But I don't, floppies, I don't think too much about them. I don't think of them as the future of the medium. And I'm surprised that they still exist. I know that, our good friend Nick disagrees with us, but I think that that's where it's going. And Lone Wolf and Cub, well, it's an Eastern, right?
Well, Lone Wolf and Cub is, what's his face? Mr. Japanese director guy. What's the famous Akira Kurosawa?
No, he didn't do those.
No. Lone Wolf and Cub is like a retelling of that famous Kurosawa film. What the hell is it called? Seven Samurai.
No, there's Musashi Miyamoto, who was the Samurai 1, 2, and 3, which were I think Mifune's, and I'm not even sure if Kurosawa directed those. But the Lone Wolf and Cub was a series of books that became a series of manga that became a series of films. Really a television series, and then some of them got capsuled. And then there's one that was clipped together. They took one of the series and clipped them all together to make the movie Shogun Assassin, which was released in the United States with like a new soundtrack in like 1981. Which is how most people saw it. And then we realized, this is a small part of this longer thing. But it's a different director. It's great stuff, and the manga is great stuff. And obviously, First Comics did the reprints, and because it came so soon after Ronin, and Frank Miller had been such a champion for it, that he was doing covers for it, and Sienkiewicz was doing covers for it, and hard to find
Wagner, Cabbage.
Yeah. There's some great stuff, and there's great supplemental materials to them too. Mm-hmm. But it's an Eastern, it's not a Western, right? Because it's not the American West. Whereas when you see Europeans do Westerns, they do the American West. They don't do Almera, Spain, where all the spaghetti Westerns are shot. They're telling American stories. So it would be interesting to see somebody adopt that format and do a Western. You could, if it was like Lonesome Dove, where you have enough room for female readers to really become engaged, or like what was the Kevin Costner show that was on?
what's it called? Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Anyways,
right? Yellowstone.
Yellowstone. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So as long as there's enough of a human drama element to it, any backdrop works. I just, and we touched on this. I know you're trying to get us off screen, but like the good thing about different genres and why I think we're seeing, fatigue for superheroes is that was a genre that rose, as I said, because you couldn't do it on the screen well. Now that you can do it on the screen, what can't you do well on the screen? You can't tell a human interest story unless you do it as a TV show. And if the budget for that TV show has to be limited, then you can dream in illustration the way that you can't dream with actors and special effects, although that's becoming less and less an issue.
Yeah. And with that, we have come to the end of tonight's show and tell that turned into kind of a movie chat, but not that long, so it's okay. But yeah, what I was saying, everybody, is I do want to do another movie thing for those of you interested. But like I said, I got to figure out how to make it more fun, more interesting, and I don't know if it should be like me and 1 or 2 or 3 other people, or should I have the screen full and try to invite like 8 other people so there's 9 of us on the screen. I don't know. I have no idea how it would work or what we would focus on, because we can't just randomly just shoot things out. I mean, we could, but that first dedicated movie show we did, and I don't mean the impromptu one at the end of Neon Dragon's show and tell that lasted an hour and 15 minutes. The standalone one we did, it was okay, but yeah, it's just there's no focus, so and it wasn't great. So if I'm gonna do it again, I want to make sure that it's a lot more interesting and fun. And I don't know, it seems like a tall task. So if anybody has ideas, by all means, email me and talk about it, especially if you want to be on it. So there you go. But I'd like to do something. And
thanks, chat. Thank you very much.
Amongst yourselves. But yeah, it's done. We're done. I'm not going to post any more of your comments, everybody. But Matt, thank you, man. I appreciate it as always.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, you're welcome. My pleasure. Always a thrill to have you on. And I'm glad we finally got what should have been the first appearance, like I do with most people, right? The show and tell out of the way. At least we finally did it. So that's cool. And we will not be going another hour, Stanley. And did you catch up? Revolution.
Yeah.
I think you finally figured out you were behind on the stream and you finally caught up and refreshed. All right. Good night, my friend. Good night. Thanks for dropping in. Mm-hmm. Good night, Tom. Thank you. Yeah. So anyways, at some point we'll do a movie show again. Stay tuned, I guess. Long live the collectors. Absolutely. I don't know what collectors you're talking about, but woohoo, great show. Good night, everyone. Good night, Dave. Thank you. Appreciate you coming in. Finally able to make it live to a chat. Thanks, man. Great show as always. Thanks to you, Tom. Good night to you in Chicago. JC still hanging out. What's up? JC. Night all. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it. So I will leave you out. We'll close it out with the thumbnail for next week's episode, which, as I showed earlier, is with Heart. It's the show and tell. Let me get that up here. Here we go. So please don't forget to tune back in next week if you can, if you have the time. Would appreciate it. And that'll be a lot of fun. It'll be Heart once again, and showing his final 25 pieces of the collection that he will be keeping. So yes, good night to you, Marcus. Appreciate you. Thanks again for everything. Thank you, everybody. And don't forget to tune in to Nick's show this coming Friday. And then please be back here next Sunday at 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific. It did, Marcus. And that's it. We will do this all over again. Appreciate you all. Thanks again. Be cool and go blue.